The coat was brown leather, cracked along the shoulders, patched in 3 places by hands that knew how to sew but didn't care about perfection. The zipper stuck halfway every single time. You had to work it free, pull hard to the left, then up, slowly, patiently, like the woman who gave it to him had done 1,000 times before. That coat was the last thing his grandmother ever gave him. And on a night when the wind chill hit 25 below zero, when the snow fell so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in any direction, when death moved through the streets of Detroit like something alive and hungry and patient, he took that coat off his own body and wrapped it around a stranger. Then he walked into the darkness wearing nothing but a t-shirt, knowing he would die. This is the story of what happened next. The blizzard hit Detroit like a closed fist. December 18th, 2019. Temperature 15 below zero before the wind chill, 25 below with it. The kind of cold that kills without warning. The kind that turns exposed skin white in minutes. The kind that makes people lock their doors and stay inside and pray for morning. The National Weather Service had issued warnings 3 days earlier. Worst storm system in 5 years moving down from Canada. Dangerous, potentially deadly. Schools debated closing early but decided against it because the basketball team had a home game, and the Booster Club had already sold 400 tickets, and money, as always, won the argument against safety. Jefferson High School sat on the east side of Detroit. Brick building, 3 stories. Built in 1952, when the automobile industry was king, and the city still believed in its own future. Now the hallways smelled like industrial cleaner and broken promises. Half the lockers didn't close properly. The heating system worked on alternate Tuesdays. But the basketball team was undefeated and the cheerleading squad had new uniforms. And on this particular Wednesday night, none of that mattered. What mattered was the game. What mattered was the crowd. What mattered was the girl standing at center court with a smile that hid everything. Ren Caldwell was 15 years old, 5'4", dark hair pulled into a high ponytail, tied with a blue ribbon that matched her cheerleading uniform. She moved through the routine with precision, hitting every mark, every jump, every formation change with the mechanical perfection of someone who had practiced until the movements lived in her muscles rather than her mind. The crowd roared. The team won by 12. Her friends laughed about weekend plans, winter formal, boys, dresses, all the meaningless things that filled their meaningless teenage lives. Ren smiled, nodded, played her part. Sarah Reeves. That was the name on her school ID. Sarah Reeves. The name on her transcripts. The name her teachers called during roll. The name her friends knew. The name that kept her safe. Sarah Reeves was nobody. Average grades, nice enough, quiet. A cheerleader who showed up on time and never caused problems and faded into the background the moment the uniform came off. Ren Caldwell was someone else entirely. Ren Caldwell was the daughter of Garrett Caldwell. Most people in Detroit knew him by another name. Havoc, president of the hellsangels motorcycle club. Detroit chapter, the most feared man in a city that manufactured fear the way it once manufactured cars. 2 years of lies, 2 years of hiding, 2 years of a fake name and a fake address and a carefully constructed fiction that allowed a biker's daughter to attend a normal school and have normal friends and live a normal life. Because her father wanted her to have what he never did. A childhood, a chance, a life outside the club. Her mother Della had helped build the deception. Different last name. An aunt's address for school records. A cover story about a father who worked construction and traveled for jobs. Simple, believable. The kind of lie that worked because nobody bothered to look deeper. Della had taught Ren other things too. How to carry herself, how to read a room, how to say no. You don't owe men explanations, baby girl. No is a complete sentence. Ren thought about those words often, held them like armor, used them like weapons. She would need them tonight. The game ended at 8:45. By 9:15, the building was emptying. Players showered and left. Parents collected their children. Teachers locked their classrooms. The janitors started their rounds. Outside, the storm was building, wind picking up, temperature dropping, snow falling thicker by the minute. Ren changed out of her uniform in the locker room, put on jeans and a sweater and her winter coat, packed her bag, checked her phone. A text from Della. Storm's getting bad, baby. Drive straight to Aunt Margine's. No stops. Love you. Ren typed back a heart emoji and headed for the parking lot. She never made it to her car. Becket Langford was waiting by the gymnasium doors, leaning against the wall, varsity hockey jacket, brown hair carefully styled despite the wind. That smile, the one that made other girls lose their ability to think clearly. Confident, practiced, the smile of someone who had never been told no by anyone who mattered. He was 18, senior, captain of the hockey team, son of Senator Randall Langford. The kind of boy who moved through the world like he owned it, because in many ways he did. Hey, Sarah. Becket pushed off the wall, walked toward her. Winter formal next weekend. Und, you and me, what do you say? Ren stopped, shifted her bag on her shoulder. Kept her voice polite but firm, the way Della taught her. No thanks, Becket. I appreciate the ask, though. His smile flickered. Something moved behind his eyes, cold, quick. The flash of a blade before it cuts. Come on, don't be like that. I said no. He stepped closer, into her space. His breath smelled like cheap beer and expensive entitlement. The combination was nauseating. You think you're too good for me. I think I'm not interested. There's a difference. That was when his friends appeared. 3 of them. Garrett Stone, Brendan Cross, Cole Fisher. Hockey players. All seniors. All twice her size. They materialized from the shadows like they'd been waiting. Like this was planned. Like they'd done this before. They formed a circle around her. Casual. Loose. The way wolves circle prey without seeming to move at all. The parking lot was empty. Everyone else had gone home. The coaches were inside. The lights were dim. The storm was building. Ren's heart rate doubled. She kept her face neutral. Showed nothing. Havoc's daughter knew how to wear a mask. I need to go. My aunt's expecting me. Becket grabbed her arm. Not hard, not yet, but firm. Possessive. The grip of someone who believed the world existed for his convenience. You're going to regret saying no to me. She tried to pull away. He tightened his grip. His friends laughed. Low, mean, the laughter of boys who had never been held accountable for anything. Then they moved. Fast, coordinated, like a play they'd rehearsed. She was in the BMW before she could scream. Doors locked, child safety locks engaged. 4 boys, 1 girl, no witnesses, no cameras, no help. Ren's training kicked in. Not cheerleading, the other training. The one Havoc had insisted on since she was 12. Emergency protocols, situational awareness. The phone number she'd memorized and never thought she'd use. She had her phone in her hand. 3 seconds. 1 call. 3 words before Becket ripped it from her fingers. Daddy, Jefferson High. Help. The phone shattered against the dashboard. Becket threw the pieces out the window. Nobody's coming to save you, Sarah. He drove. Not toward the main road, not toward the neighborhood, toward the back lot. The old one behind the condemned gymnasium. The one nobody used anymore. The one where broken streetlights and chain-link fences and condemned buildings created a pocket of darkness that the city had forgotten. Becket turned around in the driver's seat, that smile again, but different now, colder, crueler, the mask slipping to reveal something underneath that had always been there. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah. You're going to sit out here and think about your attitude. When you're ready to say yes like a good girl, you come find me at Stone's party, 5 blocks east. Ren stared at him. Her voice came out steady despite everything screaming inside her. It's 15 below. His smile widened. Then I guess you better decide fast. They dragged her out. She fought, screamed, kicked, connected once with Cole's shin. He cursed. Brendan grabbed her arms. Stone took her legs. They carried her like she weighed nothing and dropped her on the ice. Brendan threw her phone battery into a snowbank 20 feet to the left. Cole hurled her car keys into the darkness to the right. Stone laughed, actually laughed. The sound echoed off the condemned buildings and disappeared into the storm. The BMW roared away, taillights swallowed by white. And Ren Caldwell, 15-year-old daughter of the most feared man in Detroit, was left alone in a parking lot to freeze. She stood. That was the first thing. You stand, you don't sit, you don't curl up, you don't give in. Standing means fighting. Standing means alive. The wind hit her like a wall. Drove through her sweater and jeans like they were made of paper. The temperature was beyond anything she'd experienced, beyond pain, beyond thought. It moved through her skin, through her muscles, through her bones, turned everything to ice from the inside out. Move. Her father's voice in her head. Not the gentle voice that read her stories as a child. The other voice. The one that gave orders to men who killed for a living. Movement is life. Stop moving, start dying, get up, walk, find shelter, find your phone, find your keys, do something, anything, but move. She forced her legs forward. One step, two. Her feet were already going numb. Her fingers were curling inward. The cold was stripping away her fine motor control piece by piece. The snowbank where Brendan had thrown her phone. She had to find it, had to call her father back, had to tell him exactly where she was. 10 steps, 20. She fell, got up, fell again. The snow was knee-deep in places. Heavy, wet, impossible. Her fingers dug through it, searching, desperate. Nothing, just cold and white, in endless nothing. She tried the other direction. The keys. Maybe she could find them. Get into the gym, break a window, find shelter, something, anything. But her body was betraying her, shutting down, following a protocol that had nothing to do with courage or willpower. The shivering that had racked her for the first 10 minutes was violent. Whole body convulsions that rattled her teeth and blurred her vision. She'd learned about this. Nursing class at Sawbones Medical Camp last summer. Hypothermia stages. The body's desperate attempt to generate heat through muscle contraction. Stage 1. Shivering. Confusion. Difficulty with fine motor skills. Stage 2. Violent shivering, stumbling, slurred speech, pale skin. Stage 3. Shivering stops. When the shivering stops, your core temperature has dropped below 90 degrees. Organs are failing, heart is slowing. The body has given up trying to save itself. Death is minutes away. 15 minutes after being left in that parking lot, Wren Caldwell stopped shivering. She collapsed against the gymnasium doors. Metal, frozen, locked. Her back pressed against the steel, and she slid down until she was sitting in the snow, with her legs stretched out and her arms limp at her sides and her eyes half closed against the wind. Her thoughts scattered. Time became meaningless. Seconds, minutes, hours, all the same. The cold didn't feel so bad anymore. Almost warm, almost peaceful. Her brain was shutting down, redirecting blood to her core, abandoning her extremities. A strategic retreat that would end in total collapse. This is it. The thought came clear and calm, like a fact, like a math equation, like something that was always going to be true. This is how I die. Frozen in a parking lot because some boy couldn't handle rejection. Her father would burn the city down when he found her body. That was something. That was justice of a kind. Becket Langford would learn what it meant to hurt a daughter of the Hells Angels, but Wren wouldn't be there to see it. She'd be gone, hold, still, a story people told. A warning nobody heeded. She closed her eyes. And that was when she heard footsteps. Silas Mercer heard the screaming from the science wing. He stopped mopping, bucket in one hand, mop in the other. Industrial cleaner smell burning his nose the way it had every night for the past 6 months. The school was supposed to be empty. Game ended an hour ago. Coaches left 30 minutes back. Just him and the night custodian supervisor. And that guy was passed out in the break room with a bottle of whiskey like he was every shift. The wind had to be the wind. The storm was getting worse by the minute. Radio said worst blizzard in 5 years. Wind chill 25 below. Dangerous. Deadly. The scream came again. Faint. Female. Desperate. Silas tightened his grip on the mop handle. Every instinct in his 17-year-old body told him to ignore it. Keep mopping. Finish the shift. Walk the 5 miles back to the abandoned laundromat on Woodward Avenue where he'd been sleeping for the past 8 months. Survive another night. Getting involved meant attention. Attention meant questions. Questions meant social services. Social services meant foster care. And foster care meant hell. He knew this. Knew it The way animals know which berries are poison. Through experience, through pain, through the kind of learning that leaves scars instead of certificates. His mother had died when he was 6. Ruth Mercer, 23 years old, brain aneurysm. There one moment, gone the next. No warning, no goodbye. Just a woman on the kitchen floor and a boy too young to understand why she wouldn't wake up. His grandmother had taken him in that same day. Maeve Mercer, 51 years old, widowed, living in a 2-bedroom apartment on Detroit's east side with a pension that barely covered rent and a stubbornness that covered everything else. Maeve had been the kindest person Silas ever knew. She worked 3 jobs to keep them fed, cleaning offices during the day, waitressing at a diner in the evening, doing laundry for a hotel on weekends. Her hands were always red, always rough, always gentle when they touched his face. She taught him to fix things, started with the old Chevy in the garage that hadn't run since 1997, showed him how to read an engine, how to listen for problems, how to diagnose what was wrong by touch and sound and smell. Machines make sense, baby, she'd say, handing him a wrench. People don't always, but machines, they tell you what's wrong if you know how to listen. He'd rebuilt that Chevy by the time he was 14. Got it running, not pretty, not perfect, but running. Maeve had cried when the engine turned over, stood in the garage with her hand over her mouth and tears streaming down her face. Your grandfather would have been so proud. She taught him other things too. To read, to think, to question, to care. She read to him every night until he was old enough to read to her. Shakespeare, Steinbeck, Baldwin, Morrison. Books from the library because they couldn't afford to buy them. She'd sit in her armchair with her reading glasses perched on her nose and listen to him stumble through passages and never once made him feel stupid for the words he couldn't pronounce. And she taught him the most important thing, the thing that would define every choice he made for the rest of his life. Be good, baby. The world's going to be hard on you. It's going to hit you and hurt you and try to make you mean. Don't let it make you hard back. You stay good no matter what it costs. The cancer came when Silas was 15. Breast cancer, stage 3. Caught early enough that treatment would have worked. The doctor said so. The oncologist was optimistic. Standard protocol, high survival rate. But standard protocol cost money, and money required insurance. And insurance required approval. Maeve filed the claim. Denied. Experimental treatment, the letter said. Not covered under your current plan, she appealed. Denied again. Same language, same form letter, same signature at the bottom from a claims adjuster whose name Silas would never forget. She appealed a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th. She wrote letters by hand because she didn't trust computers. Explained that she was dying, that she had a grandson who needed her, that the treatment was FDA approved, that it wasn't experimental, that someone had made a mistake. 7 appeals, 7 denials, 7 form letters that said the same thing in slightly different ways. We regret to inform you, after careful review, not covered under the terms of your policy. Maeve Mercer died on April 14, 2019, owing $40,000 in medical bills. In pain, afraid, holding her grandson's hand and telling him to be good. Promise me, her voice barely a whisper. The morphine was wearing off and the hospital wouldn't give her more because her insurance had been canceled 2 months earlier. Promise me you'll stay good, I promise, Grandma. Whatever happens, whatever the world does to you, you be good. I will, I promise. She'd smiled, squeezed his hand, closed her eyes, and left him alone in the world. What followed was 8 months of systematic destruction. The foster care system processed Silas Mercer like meat through a grinder. 4 homes in 8 months, each one worse than the last. The first family locked him in the basement for forgetting to wash dishes. 3 days, no food, a bucket in the corner. When social services came for a check-in, they told them Silas was at school. The second family stole his grandmother's coat, the brown leather jacket she'd given him 3 Christmases ago. His grandfather's, before that, the only thing he had left of her. He'd had to steal it back in the middle of the night, climbing through a window, hands shaking hard, hammering, clutching that cracked leather like a lifeline. The third family had a son who liked to use younger kids as punching bags. Silas learned to sleep with one eye open and his back against the wall. The fourth family had a father who liked to use everyone for worse. Silas ran, chose the streets over the system, chose hunger and cold and fear over hands that hurt and words that destroyed. For 8 months he'd been invisible, a ghost moving through Detroit's margins, sleeping in the abandoned laundromat on Woodward, eating from dumpsters behind restaurants, surviving on scraps and stubbornness and the promise he'd made to a dying woman. He got the janitor job through a church outreach program that didn't ask for ID or social security numbers. Night shift, minimum wage, cash, enough to buy crackers and canned soup and keep himself from starving. The work was mindless, mopping floors, cleaning toilets, emptying trash. But it was warm, and warm mattered when you slept on concrete. In his backpack, along with a sleeping bag and 2 changes of clothes and a water bottle that froze every night, he carried 2 things from his grandmother: the coat and an envelope. Old, yellowed, addressed to someone named Ruth in Chicago. His mother's name. His grandmother had never explained it. Had meant to, maybe. But the cancer took her before she could. Silas kept the envelope sealed. Wasn't sure he wanted to know what was inside. Wasn't sure he was ready for whatever truth it contained. The scream came a third time. Weaker now. Fading. A sound being swallowed by the storm. Silas dropped the mop. He ran. The back lot was a nightmare. Snow 3 feet deep in places. Wind so strong it nearly knocked him sideways. Visibility 10 feet. Maybe less. The world had been reduced to white. White above. White below. White in every direction. Nothing to orient by. Nothing to guide him except sound. He followed it. The ragged breathing. The crying. The sound of a life slipping away 1 degree at a time. He found her against the gymnasium doors. Cheerleading uniform visible beneath a winter coat that wasn't doing nearly enough. Blue lips. Gray skin. Not shivering. That was the detail that hit him hardest. She wasn't shivering. He'd learned this in health class. Back when he still went to school regularly. Back when school was something he attended instead of something he cleaned. When the body stops shivering, core temperature has dropped below 90 degrees. Organs are failing, heart is slowing. Death is minutes away. He dropped to his knees beside her. Hey, look at me. Her eyes opened, barely, pupils dilated, confused, the look of someone who had already started leaving. Help. The word was a whisper, a prayer spoken to no one and everyone. Silas was already unzipping his jacket. The coat, his grandmother's coat, brown leather, cracked, patched, that zipper that stuck halfway every single time. He worked it free, pulled to the left, then up, slowly, patiently, the way Maeve had done. The cold hit his t-shirt like a physical attack. Wind driving through the thin cotton fabric, finding every inch of exposed skin. His body started shaking immediately, violent tremors that blurred his vision and rattled his teeth. He wrapped the coat around her shoulders, pulled it tight, tucked the edges around her legs, covered every inch of exposed skin he could reach. She tried to push it back. Her hands barely moved, fingers blue, coordination gone. No, you'll die. You're dying faster. I can't take your coat. You're not taking it. I'm giving it. He pulled the coat tighter around her, pressed the collar against her neck, made sure the patches his grandmother had sewn covered her arms where the cheerleading sleeves left skin exposed. His body was shaking violently now. The cold moved through him like a living thing, finding his blood, finding his bones, turning everything to ice from the inside out. He could feel his heartbeat slowing, could feel his thoughts beginning to scatter like birds startled from a wire. This was how he would die. He knew it with absolute certainty, giving away the only thing keeping him alive to a stranger whose name he didn't know. In a parking lot that nobody remembered existed, in a storm that nobody would search through until morning. But she needed it more. Simple math, simple choice. She'd been out here longer. Her core temperature was lower. She'd die first. He'd die slower. Maybe slow enough for help to come. You called someone right. Her teeth chattered. My father, 15 minutes, then hold on. 15 minutes is nothing. He rubbed her arms, trying to create friction, heat, anything. His own hands were going numb. His fingers were turning white. The shaking was getting worse. "What's your name?" She hesitated. The fake name was automatic, Sarah. Sarah Reeves, the name she'd been using for 2 years. The name that kept her safe. But something about this moment, something about this boy who was dying for her, something about the look in his eyes, honest, unafraid, the look of someone who had nothing left to lose and had chosen to spend it on her. Wren. The real name came out before she could stop it. Not Sarah. Wren, the name her father whispered when he tucked her in. The name her mother sang in lullabies. The name that only family knew. Cal. He didn't bother with the last name. If he died here, it didn't matter. Silas. Sorry, Silas. People call me different things. Stay awake, Wren. Talk to me. So cold. I know, fight it. 15 minutes is nothing. Her eyes focused on him. Really focused. Saw past the cold, past the fear, past the dying. "I know you, the janitor kid. You sit alone at lunch in the back hallway. That's me. Why are you doing this?" "Because you needed it more. You'll die out here, maybe." The word came honest. True. No bravado, no heroics, just a boy acknowledging the likely consequences of his choice and making it anyway. "That's stupid." A ghost of a smile crossed his blue lips. "My grandmother said the same thing. Said I had too much heart. Not enough sense. She sounds smart. She's dead. 8 months. Cancer." Wren's face crumpled. Even through the hypothermia. Even through the dying. Grief recognizing grief. "I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just stay alive. That's how you thank me." Engines, distant but getting closer, cutting through the storm like thunder through clouds. Multiple engines, big engines. The deep-throated roar of motorcycles being pushed beyond their limits through conditions that would kill most riders. Wren's head lifted. "That's him. Good, you're going to be okay." Silas stood. His legs shook. The cold was in his bones now. Deep, structural. The kind of cold that doesn't leave. The kind that kills slowly from the center outward. He'd given away his survival for a stranger. For a girl whose last name he didn't know. Whose face he'd barely seen in the dark. Whose voice he'd remember for however long he had left. His grandmother would have understood. Would have approved. Would have done exactly the same thing. "Wait," Wren grabbed his arm. What strength she had left went into that grip. "Don't go. My father will help you, please. I've got a place nearby. I'll be fine." "You're lying." He was. "Someone will notice you soon." She tightened her grip. "At least your name. Your full name. Silas Mercer." Headlights cut through the whiteout. Multiple headlights. Bright, close. The engine thunder grew louder. Closer, death machines roaring through a storm that should have stopped everything. "Please." Wren's voice broke. "Please wait." But Silas was already backing away. Into the storm. Into the white. Into the cold that would kill him. Moving away from attention. Away from questions. Away from the system that had hurt him worse than any blizzard. He heard her calling his name. Heard men's voices. Heard motorcycles dying. Heard someone say, "Baby girl," and "Where is he?" and find him. But Silas Mercer was gone. Moving through the storm, one foot in front of the other. No coat, no protection. Nothing between his skin and the wind, except a thin cotton t-shirt that was already frozen stiff. The cold was worse now, exponentially worse. Without the coat, without the barrier. Hypothermia set in fast. 5 minutes. 10. His thoughts blurred. His vision darkened. His body stopped obeying commands. 1 mile. That was as far as he got. His legs quit, just stopped working. Buckled beneath him, dropped him face first into a snowbank on the side of a road that nobody was driving on because everyone with any sense was inside. He tried to get up. Couldn't. Tried to crawl. Made it maybe 50 feet. His arms gave out. His face hit snow. Cold. White. Endless. His grandmother's words echoed one last time. Soft. Clear. The voice of the only person who had ever loved him unconditionally. "Stay kind, baby, even when it costs everything." Darkness swallowed him whole. Garrett Caldwell broke every traffic law between the clubhouse and Jefferson High School. 6 brothers rode behind him. Colt, Stitch, Shade, Bishop, Forge, Axel. Engines screaming against the storm. Leather cuts whipping in the wind. No helmets, no safety gear. Just speed and fury, and the kind of fear that only a father can feel. 15 minutes. He'd promised his daughter 15 minutes. He made it in 12. The call had come through at 9:32. 3 words on the emergency line he'd made Ren memorize when she was 13. A number that connected directly to a burner phone that never left his pocket. A number that meant everything else stopped. Daddy, Jefferson High, help, then silence. The line dying, his daughter's voice disappearing into static. Havoc had been on his bike in 90 seconds. Brothers behind him in 2 minutes. Rolling out of the clubhouse garage into a storm that no sane person would ride through. But sanity was a luxury that fathers couldn't afford when their daughters called for help. The back lot appeared through the whiteout, a figure against the gymnasium doors, small, still, wrapped in something brown. Havoc was off his bike before it stopped moving. The Harley skidded, dropped. He didn't care. 2,000 pounds of steel and chrome grinding across ice. Meaningless. Ren. Her eyes opened. Daddy. He lifted her. Light, too light. Her skin was gray. Her lips were blue. She wasn't shivering. You came. I always come. He held her against his chest. Felt how cold she was through his leather jacket. Through his flannel. Through his skin. Cold that radiated off her like heat radiates off a furnace. Wrong direction cold. Death cold. Who did this to you? She told him. Every detail. Every name. Becket Langford. 3 others. Left her here. Stripped of phone and keys. Left to freeze because she said no to a dance. And the coat. The coat wasn't hers. A boy had given it to her. The janitor kid. Walked away into the storm with nothing so she could have something. Saved her life and then disappeared. Havoc looked at the coat wrapped around his daughter. Old, worn, loved in a way that had nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with survival. Patches sewn by hand with careful, imperfect stitches. A zipper that looked like it barely functioned. A lining of faded blue fabric with tiny white flowers. This wasn't something you gave away lightly. This was everything. This was a person's last possession offered to a stranger without hesitation. Who? His name is Silas Mercer. Works here, janitor. Homeless, I think. Ren's voice was fading. Her eyes were closing. The hypothermia was pulling her under. Daddy, he walked into the storm with nothing. He's dying out there right now because he saved me. Stitch appeared at Havoc's shoulder. Medic bag already open. One look at Ren and his jaw went tight. 17 years as the club's field medic. 2 tours in Afghanistan before that. He'd seen hypothermia in the mountains of Kandahar. He knew what it looked like in its final stages. Severe hypothermia, core temps critical. We move now or we lose her. Havoc looked at his brothers, 6 men standing in a blizzard, waiting for orders, ready for anything. Colt, you're the fastest rider. Get her to the hospital. Now, Stitch goes with her, everyone else. We're hunting, Silas Mercer. Find him before the cold does. Shade's voice cut through the wind. What about the Langford kid? Havoc's answer came without hesitation. The words would echo through the club for years. Langford can wait. The kid who saved my daughter can't. They split into the storm. Colt took Ren, Stitch in the sidecar. Racing toward the Detroit General through streets that were buried under 2 feet of snow, Havoc took north, the direction Ren had pointed, the direction where a 17-year-old boy had walked toward his death wearing nothing but a t-shirt. 1 mile out. Footprints, staggering, filling with snow but still visible. The footprints of someone stumbling, weaving, falling and getting up and falling again. Another 1/4 mile. A trench in the snow. Someone crawling, hands and knees, dragging themselves forward through sheer willpower. Another 100 yards. A body, face down, thin shirt plastered to a thin frame. Motionless. Havoc dropped his bike, ran, fell, got up, ran again, reached the body, rolled it over. Young, 17, maybe younger, too thin, the kind of thin that came from missed meals, from poverty, from the slow erosion of a body that wasn't getting what it needed. Gray skin, purple lips, barely a heartbeat. Havoc keyed his radio, found him 2 miles northwest. Critical. Colt's voice crackled back through static. Hospital's got Ren. Stitch says another 10 minutes and she'd have had brain damage. Maybe worse. Havoc looked at the boy in his arms. 10 minutes. The code had bought exactly 10 minutes. The difference between his daughter coming home and his daughter dying in a parking lot, between brain damage and recovery, between life and something worse than death. This kid, this stranger, this homeless 17-year-old who had nothing in the world except a dead grandmother's coat had given that away, had chosen death over letting someone else die. Get Forge here with the truck. Now. Havoc stripped off his own jacket, his cut, his flannel, everything he could spare, wrapped the boy tight, pulled him close. Body heat. Only chance. Don't you die. You hear me. Don't you dare die. The boy's eyes fluttered, barely conscious, barely there. Cold, I know. You're going to make it. You saved my daughter. I'm not letting you die. He held the boy in the snow, a 50-year-old biker president, silver-streaked hair, face like carved granite, tattoos covering every visible inch of skin, holding a dying teenager the way he'd held Ren when she was a baby, rocking, warming, refusing to let go. Forge's truck arrived 8 minutes later. They loaded Silas in the back, heater at full blast, blankets, hot water bottles from a first aid kit, everything they had. The ride to the hospital felt like hours. Havoc stayed in the truck bed, holding the boy, keeping him alive through sheer force of will, talking to him, telling him to hold on, telling him help was coming, telling him he wasn't alone anymore. The emergency room doctors swarmed. Hypothermia critical. Core temperature, 28 degrees Celsius. Cardiac arrest imminent. They worked for an hour. Warming blankets, heated IV fluids, warmed oxygen, slow, careful, methodical resurrection. Raising the body's temperature 1 degree at a time because too fast would stop the heart and too slow would lose the brain. Slowly, degree by degree, the boy's temperature climbed, his heart steadied, his breathing evened, color returned to his lips. He would live. Barely, but he would live. Havoc sat in the waiting room, hands shaking, not from cold, from the weight of what he'd just witnessed. A homeless 17-year-old had given everything to save a stranger, had walked into a blizzard knowing it would kill him because someone needed help. When was the last time Havoc had met someone like that? Someone genuinely, completely good. The answer came immediately. Never in 50 years of living, in 30 years of running the hardest club in Detroit, in a lifetime of judging men by their actions rather than their words. He had never met anyone like Silas Mercer. Colt appeared in the doorway. Ren stable. Stitch got her core temp up. She's sleeping, asking about the boy. He's alive? Good. Colt sat. His face was tight, controlled. The face of a man who had information he didn't want to deliver. We've got a problem. Langford, that's the start. His father is Senator Randall Langford. Havoc already knew the name. Every biker in Michigan knew that name. But the way Colt said it, the weight behind it, the careful neutrality of his voice. What about him? Randall Langford has history with us. The kind that killed Nolan. Havoc's blood went cold. Nolan, his brother, dead 20 years. Brake lines cut. Crash staged. Case closed by a district attorney who got promoted to state senator 6 months later. A DA named Randall Langford. You're sure Bishop pulled the files. Same case, same signature, same man. Havoc stood, something shifting inside him, something old and dangerous and patient. 20 years of grief, 20 years of unanswered questions, 20 years of knowing his brother was murdered and being unable to prove it. Then Becket didn't pick Ren randomly. No, this was a message from a man who thought he was untouchable, father to son, generation to generation. The Langfords destroying the Caldwells. Again. The hospital was quiet. 2 in the morning. Storm still raging outside, but muted behind thick walls and double-pane glass. Wren lay in her bed, monitors beeping, color returning to her cheeks, alive because of a coat. She wasn't sleeping. She was thinking, processing, the way she always did, the way Havoc had taught her. Don't react. Think, plan, then move. When Bishop appeared in her doorway, she wasn't surprised. He was thin, watchful, eyes that missed nothing and revealed less, the club's intelligence officer. The man who knew things before anyone else and shared them on his own schedule. He moved like a shadow, silent, precise. You're awake. Wren sat up, pain in her chest, in her fingers, in her toes, the damage that cold does to living tissue. But her mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in months. I want to know why Becket knew my real name. Bishop pulled a folder from inside his jacket, set it on the table beside her bed. Your father doesn't know I'm here. Neither does anyone else. Then why are you here? Because you asked the right question. He opened the folder. Photos, documents, police reports from 20 years ago, yellowed paper, faded ink, the bureaucratic remains of a murder that had been filed away and forgotten. Your Uncle Nolan died in 1999. Brake lines cut, staged to look like an accident. The investigating officer flagged it for homicide. But the district attorney closed the case, ruled it accidental, sealed the file. Bishop pulled out a single page, a signature at the bottom. Confident, bold. The handwriting of a man who believed his name carried authority. That DA was Randall Langford, Becket's father, now Senator Langford. Wren's stomach dropped. The hospital room tilted, the monitors beeped faster. Why? Because Nolan saw something. 3 weeks before he died, your uncle testified in a federal investigation. Organized crime. Cartel money flowing through Detroit. He witnessed a public official taking cash payments in a warehouse on the waterfront. Testified in secret. Thought he was protected. The official was Langford. Bishop nodded. Nolan's testimony should have ended Langford's career. Instead, Nolan died. The testimony disappeared. Langford got promoted, became a senator, built an empire on corruption. Wren read every page, every report, every piece of evidence. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She absorbed it the way she absorbed chemistry formulas and historical dates, with precision, with retention, with the understanding that information was power, and she had just been handed a weapon. Becket didn't choose me randomly. No. His father knew who you were, knew you were Havoc's daughter. The attack was a message, a warning. Stay away from the past or lose what matters most. But they failed. They failed. Bishop's voice dropped. And now you know the truth. Wren closed the fold down and held it against her chest. 20 years, her uncle murdered, her father living with that grief every day, a senator building his career on blood and silence. And now that same senator had sent his son to kill her. The connections were too direct, too deliberate, too personal to be anything but what they were. War. Wren looked at Bishop, really looked, saw past the shadows and the silence to the man underneath. A man who had been waiting years for someone to ask the right questions. What do I do with this? That's up to you, he left, silent as he'd come. Wren sat in the hospital bed, dawn breaking through the windows, gray winter light, the storm easing, the world returning to something that resembled normal. But nothing was normal anymore. She was 15 years old, too young to vote, too young to drive without a permit, too young for anyone to take seriously. But she was Havoc's daughter, and Havoc had taught her that power didn't come from age or money or position. Power came from knowledge, from patience, from the willingness to wait until the moment was right and then strike without mercy. She had time. She had the truth. She had a folder full of evidence and a mind that processed information faster than most adults. And she had something else. Something that Randall Langford didn't know about and couldn't defend against. She had a debt to repay. Silas Mercer had given her his grandmother's coat, his only possession, his last connection to the woman who raised him. He'd given it freely, without hesitation, without expecting anything back. He'd walked into a blizzard to deal so she could live. That sacrifice demanded something in return. Not gratitude, not money, not a favor. Justice. Wren Caldwell would not waste the life Silas Mercer had saved. She would use it, build something with it, fight for something that mattered, starting with destroying the man who had killed her uncle, the man whose son had tried to kill her, the man who sat in a Senate office thinking he was untouchable. She would take him down. Not with violence, not with revenge, with law, with evidence, with the patient, meticulous, relentless pursuit of truth. The way that would make a homeless kid with too much heart proud. 3 days later, Silas woke up. The first thing he noticed was warmth. Real warmth. Not the thin, desperate warmth of a sleeping bag on concrete. Not the fleeting warmth of a heating vent on a cold night. Deep warmth. The kind that comes from clean sheets and thick blankets and a room with a heater that actually works. He lay still, eyes closed, convinced this was a dream, had to be. 8 months of cold and hunger and sleeping with one eye open didn't prepare you for waking up in a real bed. You planning to sleep all day, or you planning to eat? A woman's voice. Warm, direct. The voice of someone who had spent a lifetime feeding people who needed feeding. Silas opened his eyes. The woman in the doorway was heavy set, maybe 50, silver-streaked auburn hair pulled into a practical bun, sharp eyes, warm face. She wore an apron over jeans and a Hell's Angels t-shirt. "I'm Della, Havoc's wife. You've been asleep 14 hours. Figured you'd be hungry," his stomach answered before he could. A growl so loud it echoed off the walls. Della smiled. "That's what I thought. Bathrooms down the hall. Clean clothes on the chair. You've got 10 minutes before the eggs get cold." 10 minutes later, Silas sat at a kitchen table covered in food. Bacon, eggs, toast, hash browns, orange juice, coffee. More food than he'd seen in months. His hands shook, reaching for the fork. "Eat. Don't talk, just eat." Della sat across from him, watching, not judging, just present. The way Maeve used to sit when Silas was small and struggling with something he couldn't name. 3 plates later, he finally slowed down. His stomach hurt from the volume, but the pain was different from the pain he knew. This was fullness. This was enough. "When's the last time you had a real meal?" "Thanksgiving." "School cafeteria served turkey before break." "That was 7 weeks ago. I had stuff since then." "Crackers, canned soup. I wasn't starving. Boy, you weigh maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. You were absolutely starving." Della's voice softened, changed, became something that Silas hadn't heard directed at him since his grandmother died. Concern, real concern, not the professional concern of social workers checking boxes. The concern of someone who looked at a hungry kid and felt it in her chest. "Nobody's going to take this food away from you. Nobody's going to make you earn it. You eat when you're hungry. You sleep when you're tired. That's how things work here." "Why? Why what? Why are you being nice to me?" Della studied him, the same way Havoc had studied him, like she could see through walls, through time, through every defense he'd ever built. "Because you gave my husband's daughter your coat. The only thing keeping you alive. You did that without knowing who she was, without expecting anything back. That tells me everything I need to know about you. It tells you I'm stupid. It tells me you're good. There's a difference." She stood, started clearing plates. "Havoc wants to see you when you're done. His office is down the hall, last door on the left." Havoc's office was small, cluttered, a desk covered in papers, motorcycle magazines stacked on the floor, photos on the wall, club rides, brothers laughing, a younger Havoc standing next to a man who looked exactly like him. "Sit." Silas sat. Havoc was behind the desk, silver-streaked hair pulled back, face like carved granite, tattoos everywhere, a leather vest covered in patches. But his eyes were what made Silas go still. Cold. Calculating. The eyes of a man who had spent decades reading people and was now reading him. "You gave my daughter your coat. The storm, the girl, the jacket. It came flooding back. Every detail sharp and clear despite the hypothermia. Wren, is she okay?" "She's fine. Because of you." Something shifted in Havoc's voice. Real emotion breaking through the granite surface. Raw and uncontrolled. "Doctor said another 10 minutes and she'd have had permanent brain damage. Maybe worse. You saved her. She needed it more than me. That jacket was everything you had. It was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she died, and you gave it to a stranger. Ren was dying. It wasn't complicated. Havoc studied him, a long, searching look that seemed to see past every wall Silas had ever built, every defense, every mask, down to whatever was underneath. Most people would have walked past, told themselves they had their own problems, their own survival to worry about. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Havoc stood, walked to the door, stopped. I'm going to give you a choice. You can walk out right now, back to the laundromat, back to being invisible. Nobody stops you. Nobody follows. Or you can stay. 3 meals a day, a real bed, finish your education, find something you haven't had in a long time. What's that? Family? He left. Silas stared at the ceiling. His grandmother's voice echoed, soft, clear, steady. Whatever happens, you be good. He'd give it a week, 7 days. If it felt wrong, he'd leave. If the walls closed in or the questions got too sharp or the price of belonging became too high, he'd disappear. He was good at disappearing. 8 months of practice. 7 days. He could do 7 days. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 8 months, Silas Mercer slept without fear. That same morning, Ren sat up in her hospital bed and asked to see him. Silas, the boy with the coat. Havoc brought him that afternoon. Rode the motorcycle through streets that were still being plowed. Silas on the back, holding on, feeling the wind on his face and remembering a different kind of cold. Ren was sitting up when they arrived, color in her cheeks, eyes bright, alive in ways that had nothing to do with body temperature. You're awake? Yeah. How do you feel? Better. Your mom's a good cook. She's not my. Ren stopped, smiled. Yeah. Della's amazing. Silence stretched between them. Two strangers connected by a moment that had nearly killed them both. I wanted to thank you for the coat, for staying with me. You already thanked me in the parking lot. That doesn't count. I was dying. I barely remember it. Ren leaned forward, serious, intent. The girl who had been dying 3 days ago was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone whose eyes held a purpose that Silas couldn't quite identify, but could feel like heat from a fire. You saved my life, Silas. You gave away your only coat in 15 below weather. You could have died, but I didn't, because my dad found you. If he'd been 5 minutes later, but he wasn't. Why do you do that? Brush it off like it's nothing, because it is nothing. You're alive. I'm alive. What's the point of going over it? The point is, I want to understand. Ren's voice cracked, emotion breaking through the composure she'd inherited from her father. Real feeling, the kind that can't be hidden. You had no reason to help me. You had every reason to walk past. Why? Silas looked out the window, gray winter sky, bare trees, nothing beautiful. My grandmother told me this story once. When she was young, she was waiting for a bus in winter. Some guy collapsed on the sidewalk. Heart attack. Everyone walked past, didn't want to get involved, didn't want to be late for work. My grandmother stopped, called for help, stayed with him until the ambulance came. He survived. Teacher, 3 kids, 30 years of students. What happened to her? She missed her bus, got fired from her job for being late, had to start over from nothing. Silas finally looked at Ren. She never regretted it, said she'd do it again every single time. Said being good wasn't about what you got back. It was about who you wanted to be. Ren wiped her eyes. She sounds amazing. She was. Havoc cleared his throat from the doorway. Silas had forgotten he was there. We should go. Let Ren rest. Wait. Ren reached into the drawer beside her bed, pulled out a small piece of fabric, faded blue with tiny white flowers. The lining from the coat, cut carefully, preserved. Your dad has your grandmother's jacket. In his office, he's keeping it safe for you. But I had Della save this piece. I thought you'd want something to carry with you. Silas took the patch. His grandmother had sewn that lining herself, said the flowers reminded her of the garden she'd had as a girl. His throat closed up. Thank you. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something. He tucked the fabric into his pocket, close to his heart. It's everything. They left. The ride back was quiet, snow falling gently now, the storm spent, the world white and still and new. But inside Silas's pocket, a piece of faded blue fabric with tiny flowers held the weight of two women's love. One dead, one alive, both given freely. And in a hospital bed, Ren Caldwell opened Bishop's folder one more time. Read every page again, every detail, every connection between her uncle's death and a senator's rise to power. By the time the sun set, she had a plan, not revenge, something bigger, something that would take years, something that would require patience and intelligence, and the kind of courage that had nothing to do with physical strength. She would learn the law. She would gather evidence. She would build a case so airtight that no amount of money or power could escape it. And she would do it for all of them. For Nolan, who died for the truth. For Maeve, who died because profit mattered more than people. For Silas, who gave away everything and expected nothing back. For herself, the girl who should have died in a parking lot and didn't. Ren Caldwell was 15 years old. She had time. She had purpose. She had the truth. Outside her window, the last of the storm clouds broke apart. Stars appeared, cold and distant and permanent. And somewhere in a room down the hall, a boy who had been invisible for 8 months slept in a real bed with a full stomach and a piece of his grandmother's love in his pocket. One coat, one choice, one sacrifice. The ripples were just beginning. 18 months is a long time when you are young, long enough to learn a new language, long enough to rebuild a body that was starving, long enough to transform a homeless boy into something that resembled a man, and to harden a 15-year-old girl into something that resembled a weapon. 18 months after the blizzard, Ren Caldwell was 16 years old, and she had been quietly, methodically, patiently building the case that would destroy a United States senator. Nobody knew. Not her friends at school, not most of the club, not even her father, who believed his daughter spent her evenings studying for honors classes and her weekends volunteering at the church food pantry. Both of those things were true, but they were also cover, a carefully maintained fiction that allowed Ren to do the real work in the hours between midnight and dawn, when the clubhouse was quiet and Bishop's encrypted servers hummed in the basement room that only 3 people knew existed. Bishop had become her partner, the club's intelligence officer, thin, watchful, unsettling in the way he seemed to know things before they happened and revealed them on his own schedule. He'd spent 15 years collecting fragments, financial records, digital footprints, the kind of information that powerful men believed they had erased, but that never truly disappeared. He taught Ren everything: digital forensics, how to trace money through shell companies and offshore accounts, how to find patterns in data that looked random, how to build a case that would hold up not in a biker bar, but in a federal courtroom. "You're good at this," he told her one night, 6 months into their partnership. Ren was 16, cross-legged on the floor of the basement room. Laptop open, 3 monitors showing financial records that would have made an FB forensic accountant's head spin. Good at what? Seeing the story underneath the numbers. Most people look at evidence and see chaos. You see connections. "I had a good teacher," Bishop almost smiled. "That was rare. That was significant. Your father is going to be proud when he finds out what you've been doing." "Is he going to be mad I kept it secret?" "Probably, but proud will win out." The investigation began with the witnesses, the people who had known Nolan Caldwell, who had ridden with him, who had been there in the weeks and months before his death, and who remembered things that 20 years of silence had not erased. Most were dead: club wars, accidents, old age, the natural attrition of men who lived hard and burned fast. But 3 were still alive, still in Detroit, still carrying the weight of what they knew. Ren found the first one on a Saturday afternoon in June. She was 16 years old, carrying her father's leather cutter over her arm like a shield, walking into a tattoo shop in Midtown like she owned the building. Phantom. Real name Rowan Holloway, 63 years old, retired from the club but never from the life. He ran the shop alone, did custom work for bikers and veterans and anyone else who wanted ink from hands that had been steady for 40 years. He looked up from a shoulder piece he was working on, saw the cut, saw the patches, saw the face that looked so much like Havoc's that it stopped him mid-line. "You're Havoc's girl, I am. He doesn't know you're here." "No, and he won't unless you tell him." Phantom put down his tattoo gun, told his client to take 5, led Ren to a back room that smelled like antiseptic and old leather, sat down across from her, studied her the way all club men study people. looking for lies, for weakness, for the angle that everyone always had. What do you want? The truth about Uncle Nolan. Something passed across Phantom's face. Pain, old pain, the kind that lives in the bones and never quite leaves. That was 20 years ago, kid, I know. Tell me what happened. Phantom leaned back, crossed his arms, looked at the ceiling for a long time before looking back at her. Your uncle saw something he shouldn't have. Randall Langford taking money from the cartel. Cash payments, bags of it. Nolan was doing a run for the club, making a delivery. Wrong place, wrong time. He saw Langford accepting a duffel bag from a man everybody in Detroit knew worked for the Mexican operation. Broad daylight, no attempt to hide it, because Langford believed he was untouchable. And Nolan went to the feds, testified in secret, grand jury, sealed testimony, thought he was protected, thought the system would do what the system was supposed to do. But Langford found out. 6 months later, Nolan's brake lines were cut. Professional job. Not an accident, not wear and tear. Someone who knew exactly where to cut and how deep. Did you tell the police? Phantom's jaw tightened. I tried. Went to the precinct. Filed a statement. Told them everything I knew. They wrote it down. They nodded. They said they'd follow up. And nothing. The case was closed 3 weeks later. DA ruled it accidental. Sealed the file. Case over. Justice dead. The DA was Langford. Yeah, the man killed his accuser and got promoted for it. Phantom's voice was flat, exhausted. The voice of someone who had spent 20 years carrying a truth that nobody wanted to hear. Wren left that meeting with fire in her chest. Nolan hadn't just died. He'd been murdered for trying to do the right thing, and the killer had built a career on the grave. The second witness lived in Corktown. Sparrow, real name Laurel Pratt. 58 years old, she ran a legal aid clinic in a converted storefront on Michigan Avenue, helped people who couldn't afford lawyers navigate a system designed to crush them. She'd been Nolan's girlfriend, had left the club life after he died, never gone back, but never forgotten. Sparrow cried when Wren told her why she was there. Quiet tears, the kind that come after decades of holding something in. After 20 years, someone cares enough to ask, "Tell me about him." Nolan was the best man I ever knew. He wasn't perfect. None of us were. But he was honest. When he saw Langford taking that money, he knew it was wrong. Knew he had to report it. Even though it was dangerous. Even though the club told him to let it go. Even though I begged him to stay quiet. Her voice shook but held. It got him killed. And I've lived with that guilt every single day since. If he just kept quiet, if he just walked away, he'd still be here. Or Langford would have hurt more people. Sparrow looked at her, really looked. Saw something in Wren's face that reminded her of another Caldwell from another time. You're going to go after him. Yes, you're 16 years old, I know. Then you've got time. Use it. Get educated, get trained, learn the system, become what Langford is. A lawyer, a prosecutor. Someone with power, and then take him apart from the inside. Wren had left that meeting with a plan. Law school, not just as a career, as a weapon. The third witness refused to meet, sent a message through Bishop, unsigned, untraceable. I've got a family, kids. Langford still has reach. I can't help you, I'm sorry. Wren understood. Fear was powerful. Langford had spent 20 years building his armor, making examples of people who crossed him, creating a reputation for being an untouchable. But fear worked both ways. And Wren was about to teach him that. The healthcare records changed everything. It was a Tuesday night in October. Wren was in the basement. Bishop had gained access to the database of Langford Healthcare Management, the senator's private company, the one that processed insurance claims for 300,000 people across Michigan. Wren was looking for financial irregularities, campaign contributions funneled through shell companies, cartel money laundered through medical billing, the kind of white-collar crime that left paper trails if you knew where to look. She found something else. A spreadsheet, claims denied, treatments refused, appeals rejected. 247 cases in 10 years. Life-saving treatments labeled experimental when they were FDA approved. Standard protocols rejected as unnecessary. Appeals process designed to exhaust patients until they gave up or died. 18 of them had died. Wren scrolled through the names, read the case summaries, each one a story, each one a person. Someone's mother, someone's father, someone's child. Denied treatment because a claims adjuster in an office building decided that saving their life would cut too deeply into quarterly profits. Then she found a name that stopped her breathing. Maeve Mercer. Breast cancer. Stage 3. Treatment denied 7 times. Reason given. Experimental protocol. Not covered. Appeal rejected on identical grounds each time. Claims adjuster. Thomas Wendell, direct employee of Langford Healthcare Management. Wren stared at the screen. The room was quiet. The servers hummed. The clock on the wall said 2:17 in the morning. Maeve Mercer, Silas's grandmother, the woman who had raised him, who had worked 3 jobs, who had taught him to fix engines and read Shakespeare, and be good even when the world was hard. The woman whose coat had saved Wren's life. The woman whose death had put Silas on the streets. She hadn't died of cancer. She died because a senator's company decided her life wasn't worth the expense. Wren kept scrolling, looking for more, looking for patterns, looking for anything that would help her understand the scope of what Langford had done. Another name caught her eye. Ruth Mercer, Chicago. Denied 2016. Breast cancer, same adjuster, same denial language, same outcome. Deceased, Ruth Mercer. Silas's mother's name was Ruth. She died when he was 6. Brain aneurysm, he'd said. But this Ruth Mercer had died in 2016, in Chicago, of cancer. Not an aneurysm, not in Detroit. Wren flagged the file. Something didn't add up. Same last name, same first name, different city, different cause of death, different year. Maybe a coincidence. Probably a coincidence. Detroit was full of Mercers, but Wren had learned from Bishop that coincidences were lazy explanations for connections you hadn't found yet. She saved the file, made a note, kept moving. By dawn, she had the full picture. 247 denied claims, 18 deaths, a pattern of systematic, deliberate, profitable murder by paperwork. And at the center of it all, Randall Langford, the senator who killed with a pen instead of a gun. Telling Silas was the hardest thing Wren had ever done. It was December, almost exactly 1 year after the blizzard. Snow falling outside. Gentle this time. Nothing like the storm that had nearly killed them both. They sat in Havoc's office. Silas had just finished a shift in the garage, grease under his fingernails, hair pulled back with a rubber band, wearing the work clothes that Forge had given him on his first day. He looked different now, filled out, muscle where bone used to show, color in his face, life in his eyes. 18 months in the club had transformed him. Not just physically, something deeper, something structural. The hunted look was fading. The instinct to flinch when someone moved too fast was dulling. He was learning slowly, painfully, what it felt like to be safe. I need to tell you something. Wren's voice shook despite her best efforts. She'd rehearsed this 100 times in the mirror, in the shower, in the quiet hours before dawn when she was alone with the evidence and the weight of what it meant. Silas looked up, concerned. He always noticed when something was wrong, had a radar for other people's pain. The gift or curse of someone who had experienced too much of his own. What's wrong? She showed him the files. Every page, every denied claim, every appeal, the pattern, the profit motive, the man responsible. Maeve Mercer's name highlighted in yellow. 7 denials, 7 form letters, 7 times a dying woman begged for help and was told no. Silas read in silence. His expression didn't change, but his hands trembled. The pages shook in his grip, small vibrations that grew larger with each line. When he finished, he sat completely still. The silence stretched. 1 minute, 2, 3. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow, empty, scraped clean of everything except the raw edge of a grief that had never healed. He killed her, legally, systematically. Yes, how long have you known? 3 months. Silas's jaw tightened, a muscle jumped in his cheek. The first visible crack in the composure he'd built over 18 months of learning to trust. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to be sure. Because I needed every piece of evidence. Because I knew once you found out, you'd want to do something about it. And I needed you to do the right something, not the wrong one. He stood, paced, energy crackling off him like static before lightning. His hands clenched and unclenched. His breathing was fast, controlled. The breathing of someone fighting to keep something terrible inside. That man denied her treatment 7 times, 7. She begged them. I have her letters. She wrote them by hand because she didn't trust computers. She explained that she was dying, that she had a grandson, that the treatment was standard, that someone had made a mistake. His voice broke. He turned away so Ren wouldn't see the tears. She died owing $40,000. Died scared and in pain because some claims adjuster decided her life wasn't worth the expense. And that adjuster worked for Langford. I know. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to destroy him. Through the law, through evidence, through justice that sticks. Silas spun around. His eyes were red, wet, furious. Justice. He's a senator. He's got money. He's got lawyers. Men like him don't face justice. They buy their way out of it. They do when you build a case they can't escape. When you have evidence they can't bury. When you go public in a way that makes it impossible for anyone to look away. Ren stood, met his eyes, didn't flinch from the pain she saw there. I've been building that case for a year. Your grandmother is part of it. Nolan is part of it. 17 other deaths are part of it. Cartel money, campaign finance fraud, a pattern of corruption spanning 2 decades. Her voice went hard. Determined, the voice of a girl who had spent 12 months becoming something new. I promise you, Silas Mercer, I will put Randall Langford in prison for your grandmother, for my uncle, for everyone he's destroyed, and I'll do it the right way, through law, through evidence, so he stays down forever and never hurts anyone again. Silas stared at her. This girl, this 16-year-old who had almost died in a parking lot and turned that death into purpose, into mission, into something bigger than revenge. How long? However long it takes. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded, slow, deliberate. Then I'll wait. I'll work. I'll learn. And when you're ready, I'll testify. I'll tell the world what his company did to my grandmother. Ren crossed the room and hugged him. He resisted for a second. Instinct. The orphan's defense. Then he broke. Held her back. Cried. Really cried. For the first time since Maeve's funeral. Grief and rage and something else. Something that might have been hope. Outside snow fell, soft and quiet. And inside that office, 2 kids who had almost died together made a pact that would take years to fulfill. They didn't know it yet, but Randall Langford was already hunting them. The counterattack started small. A private investigator parked across the street from the clubhouse, taking photos, logging license plates, noting who came and went and when. Bishop spotted him on day 2, ran the plates, traced the PI firm to a law office in Bloomfield Hills that had handled Langford's personal legal matters for 15 years. He knows someone's digging, Bishop told Ren. He doesn't know who. He doesn't know how much we have. But he knows enough to be scared. Scared men are dangerous. Yes, they are. The pressure increased. A city building inspector showed up at the clubhouse garage, unannounced, no appointment, clipboard in hand, reading violations off a checklist that seemed designed specifically for their operation. Electrical code, fire safety, zoning permits, environmental compliance. Forge lost 3 regular customers that week. Word had spread that the Hells Angels garage was under city scrutiny. In Detroit, that meant one thing. Someone powerful wanted them shut down. Then Phantom's shop was visited. 2 men in suits, no badges, no identification. They stood in his lobby and made small talk about the neighborhood and asked casual questions about the old days and mentioned almost as an afterthought that it would be a shame if someone started looking into his tax records. Phantom called Ren that night. His voice was different, thinner, the voice of a man who had lived through enough to know what a warning looked like. They came to my shop. They know I talked to someone. They didn't say your name, but they didn't have to. Are you okay? I'm fine. But I'm not the one they're really after. Ren absorbed this, filed it, added it to the growing picture of a senator who was feeling the walls close in and responding the way powerful men always respond, by squeezing harder, by punishing anyone who might be a threat. She changed tactics, moved the evidence to a new system, 3 backups in 3 different locations, changed her communication protocols, stopped meeting witnesses in person, started using encrypted channels that Bishop built specifically for this purpose. They broke into Havoc's office on a Wednesday night. Someone picked the lock while the club was at a charity ride 3 towns over. Nothing was taken, but drawers were opened. Papers were moved, a message left not in words but in the violation itself. We were here. We know where you live. We can reach you whenever we want. Havoc tripled security around Wren. 2 brothers escorting her to school, 2 more at the house. Nobody went anywhere alone. But Wren didn't slow down, didn't panic, didn't retreat. She adapted, adjusted, responded to each move with a counter move that was quieter and smarter and more patient than anything Langford expected. Because Langford was fighting a war he understood: intimidation, force, the blunt instruments of power. Wren was fighting a different kind of war: evidence, documentation, the patient accumulation of truth that would become an avalanche when the time was right. While Wren built her case, Silas built himself. The prospect period in the Hells Angels was designed to break weak men and forge strong ones. 18 months of proving yourself through action, through silence, through work that was thankless and endless and deliberately humiliating. Silas cleaned toilets at 3 in the morning, washed motorcycles in freezing rain, ran errands across the city on foot when the club needed supplies, cooked meals for 20 men, served them, cleaned up after them, never complained, never asked why, never questioned orders. Colt tested him hardest. The sergeant-at-arms watched Silas like a hawk, waiting for mistakes, waiting for the moment when fatigue or frustration or ego would crack the surface and reveal whatever was underneath. You think you're tough, kid. Colt appeared in the garage one afternoon. Silas was elbow deep in an engine, changing oil on Shade's bike. I think I'm doing what needs doing. Everyone works hard the first few weeks. Then they get comfortable. Then they get lazy. You going to get lazy, Phoenix? The nickname had started as mockery. Phoenix, the bird that rises from ashes, the kid who should have died but didn't. Someone had spray painted it on his locker as a joke, but the name stuck. And slowly over months it became something else. Something earned. Something real. No, sir. We'll see. But Colt didn't leave. He stood there, arms crossed, watching Silas work, watching the way his hands moved, the way he listened to the engine, the way he adjusted without being told. When Silas finished the oil change, checked the filter, tested the compression, and cleaned up without leaving a single drop on the floor. Colt grunted, "You know bikes. My grandmother had an old Chevy. Taught me engines before she got sick. Forge says you've got a feel for it. Says machines talk to you." Silas shrugged. "They make sense. More sense than people." Colt almost smiled. "Almost. You might be all right, kid. Might be." The garage became Silas's sanctuary. Forge was 63, grease permanently embedded in his fingerprints. A laugh that shook his entire body and made everyone around him feel like the world was simpler than it pretended to be. He taught Silas everything: how to read an engine by sound, how to diagnose problems by touch, how to fix things that other mechanics said were beyond repair. Kids got the gift, Forge told Havoc one evening. Silas was supposed to be outside but heard through the open window. Most people learn mechanics. This boy understands it. Big difference. He sees things others miss, feels things others ignore. Give him 2 years and he'll be the best wrench in Detroit. Silas smiled at that. Rare. Real. The kind of smile that came from being seen, being valued, being recognized for something other than how much he could endure. School was harder. Havoc insisted on the GED. No arguments, no excuses, no negotiation. So Silas studied, late nights at the kitchen table. Wren across from him with her own homework. Della refilling coffee, bringing snacks, telling them both to take breaks before their brains melted. Wren helped him, patiently, carefully, never making him feel stupid for not knowing things that other 17-year-olds took for granted. She explained algebra 3 different ways until it clicked. Read his practice essays and offered suggestions without judgment. quizzed him on history dates until he could recite them in his sleep. 8 months in, Silas took the GED exam. Passed. Not just passed, top 5% in the state of Michigan. Havoc looked at the score sheet, looked at Silas, and smiled. Rare. Real. The kind of smile a father gives a son when the son has exceeded every expectation. Proud of you, kid. 3 words. But they landed like a cathedral bell, reverberating through every empty space that loss and abandonment had carved inside Silas Mercer's chest. That same week, Silas found the letter. He'd been carrying his grandmother's envelope for over a year, the one addressed to Ruth in Chicago, yellowed, sealed. The ink faded but still legible in Maeve's careful handwriting. He opened it sitting alone in his room at the clubhouse, hand steady, heart racing. The letter was short, 2 pages, written in Maeve's voice. Direct, warm, aching with things left unsaid. Dear Ruth, I know you asked me not to write. I know you have your reasons for leaving, and I respect them even if I don't understand them. But I need you to know that the boy is fine, Shring. Growing fast, smart, kind. He looks like you more every day. I'm sick, Ruth. The doctors say I have time, but the insurance people keep saying no, and I don't know how long I can fight them. I want you to know that if something happens to me, the boy will need someone. I know about the baby. Nora at the church told me. I'm glad you're not alone. I hope she looks like you too. Whatever happens, know that I love you. Know that I forgive you. Know that the boy carries your heart in him, whether he knows it or not. Always, Maeve. Silas read the letter 3 times. The baby. I know about the baby. His mother, Ruth Mercer, who died when he was 6. Who he'd been told died of a brain aneurysm, except there was an envelope addressed to Ruth in Chicago, written when Silas was maybe 14 or 15, based on the way Maeve described him. Years after his mother supposedly died. And Maeve mentioned a baby. The room tilted, the walls breathed. Silas sat on the edge of his bed and tried to make the pieces fit. They wouldn't, not yet. Too many gaps, too many questions, too much that Maeve had taken to her grave. He folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, placed it in the drawer beside his bed next to the patch of blue fabric with tiny white flowers. Not yet. He wasn't ready to chase this thread. Not with everything else happening. Not with the investigation and the prospect period and the fragile new life he was building brick by careful brick. But the questions didn't go away. They settled into the back of his mind like seeds, waiting, patient, ready to grow when the season was right. Across town, Becket Langford was falling. The descent had started the night of the blizzard, and it had not stopped. Expelled from Jefferson High 3 weeks after the attack, when security footage surfaced, showing him forcing a girl into his car. The footage was grainy, partial. Not enough for criminal charges because the DA's office, still staffed by people who owed their careers to Senator Langford, declined to prosecute. But it was enough for the school board. Expelled. Permanently. His hockey scholarship to Michigan State evaporated the same week. His parents filed for divorce in January. His mother moved to Arizona. His father refused his calls. The golden boy who had ruled hallways and commanded parties and believed the world was his birthright discovered that birthright could be revoked. Pills came first, prescription painkillers from a friend's medicine cabinet, then stronger ones from a dealer on 8 Mile, then heroin when the pills stopped working, when the numbness they provided wasn't deep enough to drown the image that came every night when he closed his eyes. A girl in a cheerleading uniform, blue lips, gray skin, dying in the snow because he left her there. Heroin became debt. $50,000 to dealers who didn't accept apologies or payment plans or the Langford name as collateral. His trust fund was frozen. His credit cards canceled. His father's lawyers had cut him off completely. Legally, financially, emotionally. Becket lived in a motel on 8 Mile Road. Room 12. Roaches in the corners. Stains on the ceiling. Water that ran brown. This was what remained of a life that had once seemed guaranteed. His phone rang on a Thursday night. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail. But something made him pick up. Becket Langford. Who's asking? Someone who knows what you did. Someone who knows about the girl in the parking lot. His blood went cold. What do you want? The truth. about your father, about what he ordered you to do. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You left Ren Caldwell to die because your father wanted to send a message to Havoc, wanted to show the Hell's Angels that nobody crosses a Langford, not even through his own son. Silence. Long, heavy. The silence of a man standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the ground crumble beneath his feet. The line went dead. 3 days later, Becket called Silas. Midnight. The phone rang 6 times before Silas answered. The voice on the other end was barely recognizable. Weak. Terrified. The voice of someone who had reached the end of everything. Help. Please help. Pills. Too many. I can't do this anymore. A video call request came through. Silas accepted. The screen showed a motel room. Bottles everywhere. Pills scattered across a bedspread. Blood on wrists. Shallow cuts, not deep enough to kill, deep enough to mean it. Becket, stay with me. Where are you? The Starlight Motel. Room 12, 8 Mile. Silas was already moving. Jacket, keys, phone. He burst into the main room. Ren was there, studying. She saw his face and stopped. What's wrong? Becket, suicide attempt. I'm going. She didn't hesitate. Grabbed her coat. I'm coming with you. They took Silas's bike, new, black, fast, a gift from the club for making full prospect. 80 on surface streets, 90 on the highway, 12 minutes to the motel. Room 12. Door unlocked. Becket on the bed, unconscious, breathing shallow, lips blue. Call 911. Silas moved fast, cleared the airway. Recovery position. Checked the pulse. Weak but present. Counted the pills. Counted the bottles. Tried to calculate how much in, how long, and whether the ambulance would make it in time. Ren was already on the phone. Calm, clear, giving the address, describing the situation, requesting paramedics. They arrived in 9 minutes, pumped Beckett's stomach, loaded him into the ambulance, rushed him to Detroit General. Silas and Ren followed, waited in the emergency room. 3 hours until a doctor emerged. He'll live. Stomach's been pumped. Psychiatric evaluation in the morning. You saved his life. The doctor left. The hallway was quiet. 2:30 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hummed. Ren looked at Silas. Her face was unreadable. Complicated. A 16-year-old processing something that most adults never had to face. He tried to kill me, and you just saved his life. Why? Silas thought about it, about his grandmother, about her story, about the man on the sidewalk and the bus that was missed, and the job that was lost, and the choice that was made anyway. Because that's who I want to be. Someone who helps, even when they don't deserve it. Ren was quiet for a long time. I'm not forgiving him. I'm not asking you to. They left the hospital. Snow falling, winter come full circle. And somewhere in that building, Becket Langford had been given a second chance he hadn't earned and didn't deserve. Whether he'd use it was up to him. 2 weeks later, Becket called Ren, from rehab this time. 8 days sober, shaking but alive. I meant what I said, about testifying, about giving you what you need to take my father down. Why should I trust you? Because I don't have anything left to lose. My father used me as a weapon and threw me away when I broke. Maybe if I help you destroy him, something good comes out of all the damage I've done. They met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Neutral ground, Bishop watching from a car across the street. Becket looked terrible, gaunt, hands trembling around a cup of black coffee. But his eyes were clear, present. The entitlement was gone, stripped away by pills and withdrawal and the kind of suffering that money couldn't fix. He slid a flash drive across the table. What's this? Everything? Financial records from my father's campaign accounts. Emails between him and his enforcer discussing Nolan Caldwell. Recorded phone calls planning the cover-up. Proof of cartel payments going back 20 years. Donor lists that match shell company accounts. All of it. Ren stared at the drive. Small, black, unremarkable. The kind of thing you could lose between couch cushions. And on it enough evidence to end a political dynasty. Why? Because he ordered me to hurt you. Because when I failed, he cut me off. Told me I was a liability, an embarrassment. That I'd destroyed everything he built. I was his son, and he discarded me like broken equipment. Beckett's voice shook. Not from withdrawal, from something older, deeper. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But maybe if I help you put him in prison, that's one thing. One right thing in a life full of wrong ones. Wren took the drive, held it in her palm, felt the weight of it. This tiny piece of plastic held the power to destroy a senator, to avenge Nolan Caldwell, to give Maeve Mercer justice, to change everything. My father's dangerous, Becket said. He'll come after you, after your family, after everyone you care about. He's already started. Let him. Wren stood. We'll be ready. She left. Becket watched her go, and for the first time in his ruined life, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not hope. He hadn't earned hope, but maybe the possibility of deserving it someday. The flash drive changed the calculus. What had been a careful years-long investigation suddenly had a detonator. Evidence that could end Langford's career, his freedom, his legacy. Evidence that couldn't wait for Wren to finish law school. Havoc called an emergency church meeting the night Wren showed him what she'd been building for over a year. The room was tense, 10 brothers around the table, Wren in the back, Silas beside her. The evidence spread across the table like a war map. Havoc spoke first, laid out everything. Nolan's murder, the healthcare fraud, the 18 deaths, the cartel money. Becket's testimony, the flash drive, the full picture of what Randall Langford had done over 20 years and what it would take to bring him down. Then Forge spoke. He was the oldest member, the one everyone respected, the man who had taught Silas to listen to engines and who had fixed more bikes than anyone in the chapter's history. When Forge talked, people listened. I've got concerns, he looked around the table. Met every eye. No disrespect, Havoc. None. But we're a motorcycle club. We fix bikes, we ride, we take care of our own. Going to war with a United States senator, that's not what we do. That's suicide. Murmurs of agreement. Some brothers nodding. He tried to kill my daughter. Havoc's voice went hard, the granite surface cracking. And that's terrible. Forge held up his hand. It is. But is justice for one worth destroying everything for everyone? Our families, our businesses, the garage, everything we've built in this city over 30 years. More nods, more murmurs, the room dividing along a line that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Colt stood. This isn't revenge, it's accountability. A man murdered Havoc's brother, tried to kill his daughter, has been running a healthcare company that's killed 18 people for profit. If we don't fight this, what do we stand for? We stand for our brothers. Forge's voice was calm, measured, not angry, sad. We stand for keeping each other alive, and this fight will get people killed. The room fell silent, both sides laid out, both arguments valid. The impossible arithmetic of principle versus survival. Vote. Havoc's voice cut through the tension. All in favor of supporting Wren's case, using club resources, standing together against Langford. Hands went up. Havoc, Colt, Stitch, Shade, Bishop, Silas. 6. Y'all opposed. Forge, Axel. 3 others. 5. One brother hadn't voted. Royce, youngest patched member besides Silas. 26. He sat with his hands flat on the table, looking at them, looking at Havoc, looking at Forge. Royce, I'm with Forge. I'm sorry, Havoc, but he's right. This fight will bury us. 6-6, the room went still. In 20 years of leading this club, Havoc had never seen a tied vote. The weight of it settled over the table like snow. Cold, heavy, final. As president, I break the tie. Havoc stood, looked at every brother, at Wren in the back trying not to cry, at Silas beside her, jaw tight, hands clenched. I choose my daughter. I choose justice. I choose finishing what we started. Forge stood. His face was composed, resolved, the face of a man who had made his decision before the vote was called and was at peace with it. Then I respectfully resigned my membership. The room erupted, voices overlapping, some shouting support for Forge, others calling him a coward. Havoc raised his hand. Silence fell. Anyone else? Axel stood. 2 others. Royce last looking sick about it, but standing. We're with Forge. This isn't our fight. Then leave your cuts on the table and go. They did, one by one, unzipping their vests, placing them on the scarred wooden table. Leather and patches and years of brotherhood laid down like surrendered flags. Forge was last. He folded his cut carefully, set it down, looked at Havoc. No hard feelings, brother. I hope you win. I just can't stand beside you while you try. He left. The door closed behind him. The room was smaller now, emptier. 10 brothers had become 6, plus Silas, who wasn't yet patched, but who had stayed when men twice his age had walked away. Ren was crying, silent tears streaming down her face, guilt written in every line of her body. Havoc crossed the room, knelt in front of her, took her hands. This isn't your fault, baby girl. Those men made their choice, same as we made ours. I tore your club apart. No, you gave us a reason to see who we really are. The ones who stayed chose to stay, knowing what that's real family, real brotherhood, the kind that matters when everything else falls away. He wiped her tears with his thumb, rough hands, gentle touch, the contradiction that defined him. Colt cleared his throat. One more piece of business. He looked at Silas, standing in the corner, quiet, present, having said nothing during the entire meeting because prospects didn't speak in church. Silas Mercer, Phoenix, he's been prospect for 18 months. Worked harder than any prospect I've ever seen, learned faster, showed loyalty when it mattered, stood his ground when things got hard. He stayed tonight when patched members walked. Colt looked around the table, at the 6 remaining brothers. I move, we patch him in. Full member, effective immediately. The vote was called. Every hand went up, unanimous. Havoc stood, walked to Silas, held out a leather vest, worn, heavy, patches stitched by hands that understood what those patches meant. Welcome to the family, Phoenix. Silas took the vest, felt the weight of it. Not just leather and thread, history, legacy, belonging. The thing he'd been searching for since Maeve died. The thing he'd given up hoping for. He put it on, and for the first time since his grandmother's funeral, Silas Mercer felt like he had a home. The celebration was brief, quiet. 6 brothers and a new member. Della crying and hugging Silas hard enough to crack ribs. Ren smiling through tears. But underneath the warmth, everyone felt it. The club was smaller now, weaker in numbers, stronger in conviction, heading into the biggest fight of its existence with half the soldiers it started with. Ren sat alone in the basement that night, flash drive plugged in, evidence files open on all 3 monitors, Becket's recordings playing through her headphones. She listened to a senator order his son to send a message. She listened to a father discuss brake lines with a man whose voice was calm and professional. She listened to 20 years of corruption laid bare in phone calls and emails and financial records that Langford never imagined his own son would surrender. And she began to plan. The press conference would happen, soon. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were ready. The story was too big to ignore. Randall Langford had spent 20 years believing he was untouchable. He had killed and stolen and corrupted and destroyed because no one had ever stood up and said enough. A 16-year-old girl was about to change that, not with violence, not with revenge, not with the blunt instruments of power that Langford understood. With truth. Ren Caldwell closed the last file, saved the backup, encrypted the drive, shut down the monitors. Tomorrow she would call the lawyer Bishop had vetted, the one who specialized in RICO cases, the one who had taken down a congressman in Ohio and a police chief in Philadelphia, and who had told Bishop, when presented with a summary of the evidence, that this was the most comprehensive case of political corruption he had seen in 30 years of practice. Tomorrow the dominoes would start falling. But tonight, Ren sat in the quiet basement of a clubhouse that had just lost 4 brothers and gained 1. She held the flash drive in her palm, felt its weight, thought about Nolan, who died for the truth, about Maeve, who died because truth wasn't profitable, about Silas, who gave away everything because a stranger needed help, about herself, 15 in a parking lot, 16 in a basement, 17 soon, building a weapon out of patience and evidence and the refusal to be afraid. The snow had stopped. Through the small basement window, she could see stars, cold and distant and permanent, the same stars that had appeared the night of the blizzard. The night everything changed. She was ready. The press conference was held on a Tuesday morning in February 2021, 14 months after the blizzard. Ren Caldwell stood behind a folding table in the lobby of the Wayne County Civic Center and looked into 17 cameras and did not blink. She was 16 years old. She would turn 17 in 8 months. She wore a simple blue dress, no jewelry, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking younger than her age, vulnerable, exactly what her lawyer wanted the cameras to see. Because the contrast between the girl at the microphone and the mountain of evidence stacked on the table beside her would tell the story better than any words could. The lawyer was Raymond Voss, 61 years old, silver hair, quiet voice. The kind of man who looked like someone's grandfather and argued like a surgeon with a scalpel. He had taken down a congressman in Ohio and a police chief in Philadelphia, and when Bishop had shown him a summary of the evidence against Randall Langford, he had gone very quiet for a very long time and then said 3 words. "This is enough." The room was packed. Reporters from every outlet in Michigan, 3 national networks, wire services, bloggers, podcasters. The story had leaked 2 days earlier. A teaser, enough to fill the room, not enough to spoil what was coming. Havoc sat in the front row, leather cut, arms crossed, face like carved granite. 6 brothers flanked him: Colt, Stitch, Shade, Bishop. 2 others, silent, present. A wall of leather and loyalty between Ren Yin and everything that could hurt her. Silas sat 3 rows back. No leather cut today, jeans and a button-down shirt, looking like what he was. A 19-year-old kid who had survived things that would have broken most men twice his age. His hands were steady in his lap. His eyes never left Ren. She began. "My name is Ren Caldwell. I am 16 years old. 14 months ago, Becket, Langford, and 3 others left me to die in a parking lot at Jefferson High School. The temperature was 15 below zero. I was wearing a cheerleading uniform. They took my phone. They took my keys. They left me to freeze because I said no to a winter formal invitation. Cameras flashed. Pens moved. The room held its breath. I survived because a homeless 17-year-old named Silas Mercer gave me his coat, his grandmother's coat, the only thing keeping him alive. He walked into that blizzard wearing nothing. He almost died. My father found him 2 miles away, face down in the snow, core temperature 28 degrees. Another 10 minutes and we would have lost him." She paused, let the weight of it settle across the room like snow. Then she held up the first folder. Thin, precise. This folder contains security footage from Jefferson High showing Becket Langford assaulting me, text messages between Langford and his friends planning the attack, and testimony confirming that he acted on his father's direct orders. A second folder. Thicker. Senator Randall Langford murdered my uncle Nolan Caldwell in 1999, cut his brake lines, staged an accident, closed the case as district attorney. He did this because my uncle witnessed him accepting cash payments from a drug cartel. A third folder, the thickest. Senator Langford's healthcare company systematically denied life-saving treatment to maximize profit. 247 denied claims in 10 years. 18 people died, including Maeve Mercer, Silas's grandmother, the woman who raised him, the woman whose coat saved my life. She died of treatable cancer because someone in an office decided that saving her was too expensive. Ren looked directly into the cameras. No fear, no tremor, just a 16-year-old girl standing in front of the machinery of power and refusing to step aside. "I am filing a formal complaint with the state attorney general. I am providing evidence of murder conspiracy, healthcare fraud campaign, finance violations, and attempted murder. I am asking for a full investigation." She paused. "Senator Langford believes he is untouchable, that his money and his power and his connections make him immune to consequences. He is wrong because I am not afraid, and I am not stopping until he is in prison." The room exploded, questions shouting over questions, camera shutters firing like automatic weapons, reporters pushing forward, security holding them back. Ren stepped away from the microphone, walked to her father. Havoc put his arm around her, led her through the wall of brothers and out the back door and into a waiting car that Colt had running with the heater on full. Inside the car, silence. The city moving past the windows, gray winter streets, people going about their lives, not knowing that a 16-year-old girl had just dropped a bomb that would reshape Detroit politics for the next decade. Then Ren started crying, not sad tears, something else. The pressure of 14 months releasing all at once. The weight of carrying a dead uncle's truth and a dead grandmother's injustice and 18 strangers' stolen lives was lifting off her shoulders and distributing itself across the world. Silas was in the back seat. He didn't say anything, just reached over, took her hand, held it. Havoc drove, watching the rear-view mirror, checking for tails, old habits, necessary habits. The video went viral by noon. By evening, every news station in Michigan was running it. By the following morning, national outlets had picked it up. The framing was irresistible. A teenage girl versus a corrupt senator. David versus Goliath. The daughter of a biker taking on the political establishment with nothing but evidence and nerve. Randall Langford responded the way powerful men always respond when they feel the ground shifting beneath them. He attacked. His legal team held their own press conference that afternoon. 4 lawyers in expensive suits standing behind a podium at the Langford Foundation headquarters. They called Ren a troubled teenager manipulated by a criminal organization. They called the evidence fabricated. They called the entire complaint a vendetta driven by a motorcycle gang with a history of violence and drug trafficking. The lead attorney, a woman named Judith Crane, who had defended Fortune 500 executives and won cases that should have been unwinnable, looked directly into the cameras and said the words that Langford's team believed would end the story. This is a desperate attempt by a known criminal organization to weaponize a child against a distinguished public servant. The senator will be fully vindicated, and those responsible for this defamatory attack will face the full consequences of the law. It didn't work. The evidence was too strong. The story was too compelling. The image of a 16-year-old girl standing alone against power was too resonant in a country that had spent decades watching power go unchecked. But Langford was not finished. Men who have spent 20 years accumulating power do not surrender it because of a press conference. They fight, they scheme, they use every tool at their disposal. Legal, financial, personal. The first attack came through cyberspace. Bishop's encrypted servers were targeted 2 days after the press conference. Sophisticated intrusion attempts, professional grade, the kind of hacking that cost 6 figures and left no fingerprints. Bishop had anticipated this. The evidence existed in 3 separate locations, 3 different encryption protocols, 3 different physical servers in 3 different buildings. The hack breached the first layer of defense on one server, got nowhere near the data, but the attempt itself was revealing. He's spending serious money, Bishop told Ren. This isn't some freelance hacker. This is a professional operation. Military grade, which means he's scared, which means he's dangerous. Scared men with power and money are the most dangerous men alive. The second attack came through Phantom. Rowan Holloway received visitors at his tattoo shop on a Wednesday morning. 2 men, different from the ones who had come before. Quieter, more direct. They didn't make small talk about the neighborhood. They sat in his chairs and told him exactly what would happen to his daughter in Dearborn and his grandson in elementary school if he testified before a grand jury about events that occurred 20 years ago. Phantom called Ren that night. His voice was different, not thin this time. Broken. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I've got a grandbaby. He's 6 years old. He doesn't know anything about any of this. If something happens to him because of me. Ren drove to his shop the next morning, alone, against Havoc's orders, against Bishop's advice, against every protocol they'd established for her safety. She sat in the same back room where Phantom had first told her about Nolan, sat across from a 63-year-old man who was trying not to cry, and she spoke to him with a voice that was steady and sure and carried the weight of everything she'd learned in 14 months of building a case against a monster. Nolan testified because he believed the truth mattered, even when it was dangerous, even when the people he trusted told him to stay quiet. He saw something wrong and he stood up, and it got him killed. Her voice didn't waver. If you walk away now, Langford wins again, not just against my family, against yours, against everyone who's ever been afraid of what he might do. He wins because people are too scared to say what they saw. And he keeps winning until somebody decides that being afraid isn't enough reason to be silent. Phantom stared at his hands. Tattooed fingers. Steady hands that had inked 1,000 designs and never once trembled until this week. Your uncle was my friend. Best man I've ever rode with. When he died, I tried to do the right thing. Went to the police. Filed a statement. Nobody cared. 20 years of nobody caring. Someone cares now. I care. And I have the evidence to make it matter this time. But I need you. The case needs your voice. Nolan needs your voice. The old biker was quiet for a long time. The tattoo guns were silent. The shop was closed, just the two of them in a back room that smelled like ink and old decisions. Your father know you're here? No, he'd be furious. Probably. Phantom almost laughed. God, you're just like Nolan. Too brave for your own good. He looked at her, really looked. Saw the girl who had been left to die in a parking lot. Saw the woman she was becoming. Saw something that reminded him of a friend who had been dead for 20 years and whose grave he still visited on the anniversary. All right, I'll testify. But if anything happens to my family, nothing will happen to your family. Ren's voice was iron. We're going to protect them, the same way we protect our own, because that's what this is now, one family, fighting together. She left. Phantom watched her go and picked up his phone and called Havoc and said 4 words. Your daughter is something. The third attack came from an unexpected direction. Ford showed up at the clubhouse on a Sunday morning. 3 months after he'd walked out. 3 months since he'd placed his cut on the table and resigned his membership over a vote he couldn't support. He looked tired. Older. The months had not been kind. I need to talk to Havoc. Havoc met him on the front porch. 2 men who had ridden together for 25 years. Who had saved each other's lives more times than either could count. Who had stood on opposite sides of a vote and let it break something between them that might never fully heal. Langford's people came to see me, Forge said. His voice was flat, controlled. The voice of a man delivering information he found distasteful. They offered me money. A lot of it. Wanted me to testify that the club fabricated the evidence against the senator. That Havoc ordered Ren to make false accusations. That the whole thing was a criminal conspiracy to extort a public official. And I told them to go to hell. The 2 men looked at each other, 25 years of history in that look, 25 years of trust and loyalty, and the kind of love that men in their world express through action rather than words. I left because I disagreed with the fight, Forge said. Not because I stopped being your brother. There's a difference between walking away from a battle and selling out your family. I would never. Not for any amount of money, not for any threat. How much did they offer? 300,000. Havoc was quiet. I came to tell you so you'd know he's desperate. Desperate enough to approach former members. Desperate enough to spend serious money trying to manufacture a defense. That means your daughter's case is strong. Strong enough to scare a senator. Thank you, brother. Forge nodded. Turned to leave. Stopped. For what it's worth. I was wrong. About the vote. About walking away. Ren's doing something I didn't think was possible. She's taking down a giant the right way. No guns, no violence, just truth. I should have trusted that. You're welcome back. Anytime. The door's always open. I know. But I burned my bridge. That's on me. Just keep her safe, Havoc. She's the best of all of us. He left. And Havoc stood on the porch watching him go and feeling something complicated. Gratitude. Grief. The bittersweet recognition that some wounds heal and some become scars, and the difference between the two is time and grace and whether you can forgive a man for being afraid. The trial began on a Tuesday in August, 6 months after the press conference set Michigan on fire. 6 months of legal maneuvering, discovery motions, sealed depositions, death threats that arrived weekly in plain envelopes with no return address, and a security detail of 6 Hells Angels who formed a wall around Ren every time she stepped outside. The Wayne County Courthouse in downtown Detroit was a fortress. Metal detectors at every entrance, armed marshals in every hallway, protesters on both sides of the street, signs reading justice for Nolan, besides signs reading Langford is innocent, besides signs reading Hells Angels are criminals. The charges were extensive. First-degree murder conspiracy in the death of Nolan Caldwell. Attempted murder through Becket's actions against Wren. Healthcare fraud resulting in 18 deaths. Campaign finance violations. Racketeering, money laundering. 20 years of crimes compressed into a trial that would last 3 weeks. Wren took the stand on day 3. She wore the same blue dress from the press conference, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking exactly like what she was. A 17-year-old girl who had spent 18 months building the case of the decade. State your name for the record. Wren Elizabeth Caldwell. How old are you? 17. I'll be 18 in 3 months. Tell us what happened on December 18th, 2019. She told it, every detail, the game, the parking lot, Becket's proposition, her refusal, the assault, the BMW, the backlot, the cold, the dying. Her voice stayed steady until she reached Silas. I was dying. I knew I was dying. My body had stopped shivering. In my health class, they taught us that when the shivering stops, you're minutes from cardiac arrest. I couldn't move. I couldn't call for help. I was sitting against a locked door waiting to die because a boy couldn't handle being told no. What happened next? Silas Mercer found me. He was 17, homeless, working as the night janitor. He heard me through the storm, and he came running. He found me against the gymnasium doors, and he took off his coat, his grandmother's coat, the only thing he owned, the only thing protecting him from the cold. He wrapped it around me, and he stayed with me until my father arrived. And then he walked into that blizzard wearing nothing but a t-shirt. Why would he do that? Because I was dying faster than he was. Her voice cracked. The first break in 3 days of testimony. He gave away everything to save a stranger, and he almost died for it. My father found him 2 miles away, face down, core temperature 28 degrees. His heart stopped twice in the ambulance. The courtroom was absolutely silent. 12 jurors, 6 men, 6 women, ages ranging from 25 to 70, all of them watching a girl describe the night she should have died. Cross-examination was brutal. Judith Crane approached the witness stand like a surgeon approaching an operating table. Precise, cold, methodical. Miss Caldwell, you are the daughter of a known criminal organization leader. My father runs a motorcycle club. They're not criminals. You've been investigating Senator Langford for over a year. Is that correct? Yes. Obsessively, thoroughly, using resources provided by a motorcycle gang with documented ties to illegal activity. I conducted a legal investigation with oversight from a licensed attorney. You're 17 years old. What qualifies you to investigate a murder? The question hung in the air. Crane smiled, the smile of someone who believed she had found the weakness, the crack in the armor. Wren leaned forward, looked the lawyer dead in the eye. The fact that nobody else would. The fact that a man killed my uncle and became a senator. The fact that his company killed 18 people for profit and nobody noticed. The fact that justice matters regardless of how old the person seeking it is. Crane shifted, tried another angle. Isn't it true that this entire case is motivated by personal revenge rather than a genuine pursuit of justice? Wren didn't blink. My uncle Nolan was murdered 20 years ago. Senator Langford cut his brake lines and closed the investigation as district attorney. He did this because Nolan witnessed him taking cartel money. Maeve Mercer was denied cancer treatment 7 times by Senator Langford's healthcare company. She died owing $40,000 because someone labeled her treatment experimental when it was FDA approved. She died in pain, alone, because profit mattered more than her life. Wren's voice rose, not shouting, something harder than shouting, something quieter and more dangerous. Becket Langford left me to freeze to death on his father's orders. I flatlined in the ambulance. I was dead for 90 seconds. I am alive because a homeless kid gave me his grandmother's coat and walked into a blizzard with nothing. She stood. The judge didn't stop her. So yes, this is personal. Justice is always personal when it's your family that's been destroyed, when it's your life that was nearly taken, when it's your city that's been corrupted by a man who thinks power makes him God. She pointed at Senator Langford. He sat in the defendant's chair, stone-faced, expensive suit, silver hair, the image of authority. But something flickered in his eyes, something he couldn't hide. Fear. I'm not motivated by revenge. I'm motivated by the truth. And the truth is that Randall Langford is a murderer, a fraud, a criminal who spent 20 years hiding behind a Senate seat. And today, that hiding ends. The courtroom erupted. The judge hammered for order. Crane screamed for a mistrial. The prosecution objected to the objection. But the jury had seen it, that moment, that fire, a 17-year-old girl staring into the face of power and refusing to look away. Silas testified on day 7. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, no leather cut, no club symbols, just a 19-year-old kid who had survived hell and come through it with something intact that most people lose long before they reach his age. Tell us about your grandmother, Maeve Mercer. She raised me after my mother died when I was 6, worked 3 jobs, taught me to fix engines, taught me to read, taught me to be good even when the world wasn't. What happened to her? Cancer, breast cancer, stage 3, caught early enough that treatment would have worked. The doctor said so. The survival rate was high. Did she receive treatment? No. Her insurance denied it, called it experimental. The treatment was FDA approved, standard protocol for her type of cancer. They denied her 7 times, his voice cracked. He didn't hide it, didn't apologize for it. She died 8 months before the blizzard, died owing $40,000, died in pain because someone in an office building decided that saving her life cost too much. Who made that decision? The claims adjuster worked for Langford Healthcare Management, Senator Langford's company, the same company that denied 247 life-saving treatments in 10 years. The prosecutor paused. Let the jury absorb it. Why did you give Wren Caldwell your coat? Because she was dying. I had something she needed. The choice was simple. You almost died, I know. But I'm alive. And so is she. And that matters more than anything Senator Langford's company took from my grandmother. Cross-examination tried to paint him as a bitter young man looking for someone to blame. But Silas didn't take the bait, stayed calm, stayed honest. Answered every question with the same quiet directness that had defined him since the night he gave away his coat. By the time he stepped down, 3 jurors were crying. 2 more were staring at Langford with expressions that had nothing to do with reasonable doubt. Becket testified on day 12. He had lost weight, looked older, haunted. The golden boy who had terrorized hallways was gone. In his place was a 19-year-old who had tried to kill himself and been saved by the 2 people he had hurt most. 10 months sober, prison counseling, community service. The slow, brutal work of trying to become someone different from the person he had been. Why did you do it? Because my father asked me to. Because I was raised to believe that people like Wren didn't matter. That her father was a criminal and she deserved whatever happened to her. Because I was entitled and cruel and I thought I was untouchable. He looked at Wren. She sat in the gallery, would not look at him. I was wrong about everything. I tried to kill her. I nearly succeeded. And I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to live with that. The recorded phone calls played. Becket's voice, his father's voice. Planning, coordinating. The senator telling his son exactly what to do and why. The sound of power corrupting its own children. Turning a boy into a weapon. Then discarding him when the weapon broke. Closing arguments took 2 days. The prosecution laid out 20 years of crimes with the precision of an architect laying out blueprints. Every brick connected, every wall supported, every room leading to the same conclusion. Guilty. The defense tried. Judith Crane was good, expensive. She created alternative narratives, questioned timelines, attacked witness credibility, painted everything as circumstantial, as coincidence, as the conspiracy of a criminal organization against a public servant. But the jury had seen Wren, had heard Silas, had listened to Becket's confession and the recorded calls that confirmed it, had reviewed financial records that showed cartel money flowing into campaign accounts, had read the denied claims, had counted the dead. Deliberation took 16 hours. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon, August 27, 2021. Wren sat between her father and Silas. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was hammering. 18 months of work, 2 years of living with the knowledge of what Langford had done, 20 years of her family's grief. It all came down to 12 people and a piece of paper. The jury foreman stood, older man, 60-something, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, steady hands, the hands of someone who understood the weight of what he was about to say. On the charge of first-degree murder conspiracy in the death of Nolan Caldwell. We find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Havoc grabbed Wren's hand, squeezed hard. On the charge of attempted murder through proxy, guilty. On the charge of healthcare fraud resulting in death, guilty, 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 guilty. 18 counts, 18 verdicts, each one a nail in the coffin of a career built on blood and silence. Senator Randall Langford sat motionless. His expensive lawyers shuffled papers. His political dynasty ended in real time. 20 years of power evaporating under fluorescent lights, while 12 ordinary citizens delivered the accountability that the system had denied for 2 decades. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 25 years federal prison, no parole for 15. Financial restitution to victims' families, forfeiture of all assets derived from criminal activity. The healthcare company dissolved, the campaign accounts frozen, the empire dismantled. Becket received 18 months for his role in the assault, 5 years probation, mandatory addiction treatment, a deal for his testimony. Light considering what he'd done, heavy enough to matter. Outside the courthouse, Wren stood before cameras one more time, not the scared 16-year-old from the press conference. Something else now, something harder and surer and more dangerous than anything Langford had ever faced. Justice was served today, not just for me, not just for Nolan or Maeve or the 18 others, for everyone who has ever been told they don't matter. That power makes people untouchable. That fighting back is pointless. She looked into the cameras. Randall Langford is going to prison for 25 years. And every person who thinks money and influence put them above the law should take note. Because I'm not stopping. This is just the beginning. She walked to the car. Silas held the door. Havoc drove. The club formed a barrier of leather and chrome between her and the chaos. Inside the car, silence. Then breathing. Then tears. Not sad. Released. 14 months of pressure breaking like a dam. Silas held her hand, said nothing. There was nothing to say. They had won. Against a senator, against the system, against 20 years of institutional failure. A 17-year-old girl and a 19-year-old mechanic had brought down someone everyone said was untouchable. Nolan could rest now. Maeve could rest now. And Wren could finally breathe. 3 years passed. 3 years of building, of healing, of becoming. Wren was 20, first year at Michigan Law, top of her class because of course she was. Years of studying for this. Years of preparing. The girl who took down a senator now learning to dismantle systems from the inside. Silas was 22, associate degree in mechanical engineering. Lead mechanic at the club garage. Youngest in chapter history. Forge's successor in everything but name. Machines still spoke to him, still made sense in ways that people sometimes didn't. But people were making more sense now too. Slowly, carefully. The way an engine comes back to life when you find the part that was broken and fix it. They started building Phoenix House in the spring of 24. The abandoned laundromat on Woodward Avenue. The concrete floor where Silas had slept for 8 months. The place where invisible people survived. They bought the lot, demolished the building, started over. Wren handled legal structure, nonprofit status, zoning permits, building codes. Oh, the bureaucracy that killed good ideas before they could breathe. But she'd learned from taking down a senator. Paperwork was just another kind of fight. Silas handled design, worked with architects who donated time when they heard the story, planned every room with the knowledge of someone who had lived without any of them. 50 beds, a commercial kitchen, a computer lab, a medical clinic, counseling offices, a recreation space, everything he'd wished for when he was invisible and alone. Fundraising surprised them. Wren's press conference from 3 years earlier still circulated. The girl who took down a senator. The homeless kid who gave away his coat. Their story resonated in a country desperate for proof that good people still existed. $3 million in 6 months. Donations from across the country. Corporate sponsors. Private donors. A foundation grant that came with a handwritten note from a woman in Omaha who had lost her own grandmother to a denied insurance claim. The club helped. Stitch set up the medical clinic. Della organized the kitchen. Colt trained security staff. Bishop installed the technology systems. Even Forge, no longer a member, but forever a brother, volunteered his weekends to build the mechanical infrastructure. Heating, plumbing, electrical. The invisible systems that made a building livable. Construction took 18 months. Ren balanced law school and site visits. Silas balanced garage work and contractor meetings. They built it together, brick by brick. Dream into reality. Phoenix House opened its doors on December 24th, 2024. 5 years almost to the day since the blizzard. The opening ceremony drew hundreds. City officials, social workers, shelter directors, donors, press, reporters who had covered the trial 3 years earlier, returning to cover its legacy. But the moment that stopped the city, the moment that would appear on every news broadcast, in every social media feed, in every front page the following morning, that moment belonged to the motorcycles. Havoc had made calls, not just to the Detroit chapter, to every Hells Angels chapter in Michigan, to affiliated clubs across the Midwest, to riding groups and veteran organizations and independent bikers who had followed Ren's story and wanted to be part of what it became. They came from Lansing and Grand Rapids and Traverse City and Kalamazoo, from Toledo and Chicago and Indianapolis, from small towns with names that most people had never heard. They came on Harleys and Indians and custom builds and bikes that were older than some of the riders. They came in leather cuts and denim vests and military jackets and work coats. 112 riders. They lined up on Woodward Avenue in 2 columns, engines rumbling, chrome gleaming in the winter sun. A corridor of steel and leather and human decency stretching from the street to the front door of Phoenix House. And down that corridor, one by one, walked the children. 50 kids, just ranging from 12 to 17. The first residents of Phoenix House. Homeless, invisible, forgotten by every system that was supposed to protect them. Walking between rows of the toughest men and women in the Midwest, and every single rider stood at attention as they passed. No words, no speeches. Just 112 people who had lived hard lives standing in the cold to honor 50 kids who were about to start living better ones. Some of the riders cried. They didn't hide it, didn't apologize, tears running down weathered faces into gray beards, hands that had gripped handlebars for decades trembling at their sides. Some of the children cried too, not from fear, from recognition, from the sudden, overwhelming realization that someone saw them, that someone cared, that the world contained this impossible, beautiful, thundering display of love. Silas stood at the front door, Phoenix stitched across his cut. The boy who had been invisible, now visible to everyone. He shook every child's hand as they entered, looked each one in the eye, said the same thing to every single one. Welcome home. 2 words, over and over, 50 times. And each time he said it, he meant it more. When the last child had entered, Silas stepped to the podium. The riders behind him, the building behind them, the winter sun casting long shadows across a scene that looked like something from a story that people tell each other to prove that hope is real. 5 years ago, I had nothing. No home, no family, no future. I slept on concrete in a building that used to stand right there. He pointed to the empty lot beside Phoenix House, the space where the laundromat had been, where a boy had survived on scraps and stubbornness and a promise to a dead woman. I was 17, alone, invisible, convinced the world had forgotten I existed. Then I heard someone screaming in a blizzard, a girl dying in the cold, and I made a choice. I gave her my grandmother's coat. The only thing I had, the only thing protecting me, and I walked into that storm knowing I would probably die. His voice was steady, strong. The voice of a man who had earned every word. That choice should have killed me. Instead, it gave me everything. Ren's father found me, brought me to the clubhouse, gave me a family, gave me purpose, taught me that being good matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Ren stepped beside him, leather jacket over a blue dress, the same blue dress from the press conference and the trial, her armor, her uniform, the garment that said, I am not who you think I am, and I am exactly who I need to be. 5 years ago, I was left to die in a parking lot, temperature 15 below. My heart stopped for 90 seconds. I should be dead, or brain damaged, or broken beyond repair. Her voice carried, clear, certain. The voice that had stared down a senator's lawyer and not blinked. I'm standing here because Silas Mercer chose kindness over survival. That coat saved my life. But it did more than that. It showed me what sacrifice looks like, what courage looks like, what it means to be good when being good might cost you everything. She gestured to the building behind her. Warm light glowing in every window, the sound of children inside, voices, laughter, the sounds of a place that was already becoming home. Maeve Mercer taught Silas to be good. Silas taught me to fight for what matters. Together, we're passing that forward. Every child who walks through these doors will have what Silas didn't. Warmth, safety, family, a chance. The crowd applauded. The riders rumbled their engines. A sound like thunder, like a heartbeat, like 100 mechanical voices saying, we see you and you matter and you are not alone. After the ceremony, the building filled. Donors and officials and press moved through the hallways documenting and admiring and asking questions. But Silas had stepped away from all of it, stood near the entrance, and greeting the last few visitors. Still uncomfortable with attention, but learning to accept it as the price of the mission. A girl approached, thin, 14 maybe, dark hair, defensive posture, haunted eyes that Silas recognized immediately because he had worn those exact eyes for 8 months. You Silas Mercer. Yeah, people call me Phoenix. I'm Harper. Social worker said I should come here. Said you help kids like me? We do. You hungry. Always. He led her through the building, showed her the dining hall, the bedrooms, the computer lab, the counseling offices, watched her take it in, watched hope flicker in eyes that had forgotten what hope looked like. How long you been on the streets? 6 months. Since my mom died. I'm sorry. Yeah. Harper shrugged, trying to look tough, failing, the way all kids fail when they try to be harder than the world has made them. Everybody says they're sorry. Nobody helps. We help. That's the whole point of this place. Why? Because somebody helped me once. A stranger. When I had every reason to help myself instead. Now I'm passing it forward. They reached the kitchen. Della was there, already had food laid out. Soup, fresh bread, the kind of meal that communicated safety without saying a word. Harper ate the way Silas had eaten that first morning at the clubhouse. 3 plates. 4. Not tasting, just consuming. Making up for days and weeks of not enough. When did you eat last? Yesterday, found some fries behind a McDonald's. You don't have to do that anymore. You've got a bed here, meals, whatever you need. For how long? As long as it takes. Harper looked at him. Really looked, searching for the catch, the condition, the moment when kindness became transaction. Why are you doing this? Silas thought about his grandmother, about Wren, about the code and the blizzard and everything that followed. Because 5 years ago, I was exactly where you are, and someone gave me a chance. Now it's your turn. Harper settled in over the following days, slowly, carefully, not trusting but wanting to, attending the school classes that Phoenix House provided, eating regular meals, sleeping without fear. Silas checked on her, not smothering, just present. He understood the balance. Too much attention felt like surveillance. Too little felt like abandonment, and one afternoon he found her in the computer lab, working on homework. She looked up when he entered. Can I ask you something? Sure, how did your mom die? Cancer, when I was 6, mine too. Different kind, but same result. Silas sat down across from her. You said your mom died 6 months ago. Yeah, in Chicago. We moved there when I was little. She never talked about where she came from, never talked about family. What was her name? Ruth? Ruth Mercer before she married my dad. The room went still. The air changed. Something shifted in the space between them that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the weight of a truth that had been waiting years to surface. Silas's voice came out careful. Controlled. Where was your mom from? Originally Detroit, East Side. She left when she was 19. That's all I know. Did she ever mention a son? A boy named Silas. Harper went pale. Her hands stopped moving over the keyboard. No, but she had this photo, old, worn, a boy, maybe 6 years old. She'd stare at it sometimes. Cry. Never explained why. Silas pulled out his phone, found the photo he kept in a folder he never opened. Himself at 6, the last picture taken before his mother died. The picture Maeve had kept on the mantle for 11 years. He showed it to Harper. Is this the boy? Harper stared at the screen. Her face crumbled. Piece by piece, the tough exterior dissolving, the walls collapsing. 14 years of questions answered in a single photograph. That's him. That's the boy in the photo. The room tilted. Silas gripped the table. Processing. Connecting. Understanding. His mother, Ruth Mercer, who he'd been told died when he was 6, who had actually left, gone to Chicago, started over, had another child, a daughter. And Maeve had known, had written the letter, had mentioned the baby, had carried that secret to her grave because Ruth had asked her to, because some truths are too complicated for a boy who has already lost too much. Your mom was my mom. The words came out simple, factual, the way profound truths often do. We're brother and sister. Harper started crying, not the tough girl performance, not the defensive shield. Real tears, raw and uncontrolled. The grief and shock and relief of a girl who had been alone for 6 months and had just discovered she wasn't. I'm not alone. Silas crossed the room, pulled her into a hug. She collapsed against him, sobbing, releasing months of terror and years of unanswered questions into the shoulder of a brother she never knew existed. You're not alone. You've never been alone. I just didn't know you were out there. Why didn't she tell you about me? I don't know. Maybe she thought I was better off with Grandma. Maybe she was running from something she couldn't explain. Maybe she just couldn't handle the weight of it. He held her tighter. None of that matters now. You're here. Your family. And I'm not letting go. Wren found them an hour later, still in the computer lab, still holding each other. Silas told her everything. Harper, Ruth, the photo, the letter from Maeve, the connection that had been waiting in an envelope for years. Wren listened, then smiled through tears of her own. The coat saved me. Your father built this club. This club gave you a home. You built Phoenix House. Phoenix House brought Harper here, brought your sister home. She squeezed his shoulder. That's how kindness works. It ripples. It reaches places you never imagined. It finds people you didn't know were lost. The memorial wall was unveiled that evening. Bronze plaques on a granite surface, names engraved with care. Maeve Mercer, Ruth Mercer, Nolan Caldwell, and 18 others. Every person whose death had been caused by Randall Langford's greed and corruption and absolute conviction that human lives were less valuable than profit margins. Silas stood before his grandmother's name, traced the letters with his fingers, cold bronze under warm skin. I did it, Grandma. I stayed good, just like I promised. Harper stood beside him, placed flowers below Maeve's name. For the grandmother she had never met, the woman whose coat had saved a stranger and started a chain reaction that brought a family together across 5 years and 600 miles. Then she placed flowers below Ruth's name, for the mother who had carried secrets and regrets and a photograph of a 6-year-old boy who had died of cancer in Chicago because the same company that killed Maeve had denied her treatment too. 2 women, same family, same killer, same system that valued profit over people. Becket Langford came to the ceremony, 3 years sober, running a youth outreach program on the east side, 41 kids in his care. He stood at the edge of the crowd, didn't approach, didn't expect acknowledgement, just came to witness what his confession had helped build. Wren saw him, nodded once, a small gesture, not forgiveness, not friendship, recognition, that people could change if they chose to. That redemption was not a destination, but a direction. That doing one right thing didn't erase the wrong ones, but it mattered anyway. Becket nodded back, then turned and walked to his car and drove to the east side where 41 kids were waiting for someone who had once been the worst version of himself to help them become the best versions of themselves. The sun set over Detroit, golden light flooding through Phoenix House windows, painting everything warm, making the building look the way it felt, like sanctuary, like promise, like proof that the world could be rebuilt by the people it had broken. Wren gave the closing remarks, standing on the front steps. the light behind her, 100 riders at her back, 50 children in the building above, and beside her Silas and Harper, brother and sister, family found through fire. 5 years ago, this was an empty lot, a place where invisible people survived alone. Now it's a home, a promise, proof that one person's choice to be good can change everything. She looked at the crowd, residents and staff and brothers and strangers who had come because they believed in something. Silas gave me his coat when he had every reason to keep it. That choice saved my life. My father saved his. Our family gave him a home. He gave me purpose. Together, we built this. Her voice rose, steady, sure. But this isn't about us. It's about every child who walks through those doors. Every person who's been told they don't matter. Every invisible soul who just needs someone to see them. She pointed to the Phoenix House sign, illuminated now against the darkening sky. A phoenix rising from flames, wings spread, head lifted. The ancient symbol of destruction becoming creation. Phoenix rises from ashes. So do people. So can anyone. That's the promise. That's the legacy. That's what one coat on one freezing night became. Silas stepped beside her, Harper between them. 3 people who had been alone and were now together. 3 people who had been invisible and were now seen. Silas spoke first, his voice carrying across the crowd and into the winter air. From ashes to fire. Wren continued, from invisible to seen. Harper joined them, her voice small but growing. Uncertain but becoming sure. From one to many. This is where hope lives, the crowd echoed it back. 112 riders, 50 children, dozens of staff and visitors and city officials and reporters and ordinary people who had come because they needed to believe. From ashes to fire, from invisible to seen, from one to many. This is where hope lives. Above them, the first snow of winter began to fall. Soft, gentle, nothing like the blizzard that had started everything 5 years ago. But a reminder, a memorial, a celebration of what happens when someone hears a stranger screaming in the cold and chooses to help. Inside Phoenix House, 50 children slept warm and safe. Outside, a brother and sister stood together for the first time. And somewhere across the city, a former enemy worked to earn the redemption he had been given by 2 people he had tried to destroy. The coldest night shows you who has the warmest heart. Silas Mercer had proven that truth at 17 with nothing but a dead woman's coat and a promise to be good. Wren Caldwell had amplified it into something that would outlast them both. One coat, one choice, one sacrifice. The ripples reached forward into futures they would never see, touching lives they would never meet, proving what Maeve Mercer had known all along. Being good isn't about what you get back. It's about who you choose to be. And when you choose kindness, even when it costs everything, the world has a way of giving it back. Not always in the ways you expect, not always to the people you imagine, but always, eventually, without fail. Maeve would have been proud, Nolan would have smiled, Ruth would have wept, and then every invisible child who found warmth behind those doors would carry the lesson forward, passing the coat, sharing the fire, building a world where nobody freezes alone, because someone always comes running, someone always gives what they have, someone always chooses to be good. That was the legacy. That was the victory. That was what happened when a homeless teenager heard screaming in a blizzard and did not walk away. Phoenix House opened its doors. The snow kept falling, and the invisible finally came home.